Did you send out the minutes from the last meeting? Carly? I can't, you're on mute,
All
Carly.
right. Yes, I did. I'm trying to share
Okay,
it.
so why don't we start with the attendance? If we have a quorum, then we'll ask for a review of the minutes and we'll vote on that, okay?
Okay. All right.
I'll also put the link in the chat if you want to look at the minutes on, they're all on Google Drive.
Hi, Rashmi. Okay.
Thank you, Louis.
So you guys can click the link in the chat and you can view the minutes yourself too.
Okay,
Can I start the roll call?
I believe you can, yes.
Joseph Di Benedetto.
Present.
Christine Koenig will be with us shortly. Tawana Rivera. Okay. Rashmi Krishnaraj. Hi, Rashmi. Victor Lee.
Present.
Lilik Wajianti. Akila Sorio.
Present.
Monica Pepino.
Present.
Edward Kim.
Present.
Brooke Sturgeon. Anne Marie Knable. Okay. I only have 7. I'm not sure what the new quorum is for 11.
Tawana is here.
Tawana is here.
Tawana is here. Okay. Hi, Tawana.
Anne Marie just joined.
And Anne Marie. Thank you, Louis.
So we do have a quorum present, which is good to know. Council members, have you had the opportunity to review the minutes from the last meeting? Why don't we take a moment to look at that and vote on whether or not we're going to approve that, okay?
Louis, did I do it right?
Looks great, Carly.
Okay.
And that red banner you
Listen,
on top.
this is all I can do.
Louis, you could scroll down, right? I don't, or
No, I think
Carly?
I'm trying. Hold on.
Okay,
Yeah, Carly's she's sharing her screen. She'll scroll down.
got
Tell
it.
me when to stop, Joe.
Okay. You can continue.
More?
Go ahead. Okay.
Okay.
Do I hear any motions to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve, Monica.
Thank you, Monica. Does anyone second that motion?
I second it, Akila.
Thank you, Akila. The minutes are hereby approved. Good evening, everyone. Can I get, what do we have, 102 on?
Over 100 people, Joe.
Thank you. Thank you. Nice to see everyone. Welcome to our October CEC meeting. Today, we are basically going to discuss DOE health screening, some questions and answers, and what the procedure is. There is a lot going on. The news changes by the hour. So I know a lot of you may have questions, and I would ask that you wait before you submit any of your questions. I'm going to jump right into the meeting, and I'm going to, well, first of all, I want to welcome our Executive Superintendent, Mabel Sardoui, who once again is present at our meeting, and perhaps Ms. Sardoui would like to say hello. So I'm going to give you the floor for a moment.
Thank you, President Di Benedetto. Thank you for inviting me and my Director of Student Services, Julie, who will be on shortly to answer and share with you the latest on the health procedures based on the DOE health experts that the DOE meets with on a regular basis. I have to jump off within a half hour, but Julie will stay to answer questions, and I leave you in good hands. But I wanted to share with all of you, the CEC members, how grateful I am to be in your presence, and to all the parents who are on the line, because I know that District 25 is 25 strong, and that you want to be abreast of what is the latest. And I thank your president for inviting us, and we're always open for, to come and share the latest policies and regulations that we follow based on the guidance and the science. So thank you all very much. And whenever you're ready, I'll introduce Julie. If you want me to introduce her now, I don't know.
So thank you, Executive Superintendent. So we truly appreciate your willingness to come to our meetings. You're always on, and you're always very responsive to us, and we really take that to heart, and we thank you. Before we introduce our guest speaker, I wanted to have our superintendent just give her report regarding the status of what's happening in terms of school openings up until today, and closings and whatnot, because we do have some schools in our district that were closed by the governor, regardless of testing results. And I'd like our superintendent to perhaps give us her report before we get started. Is that okay, Mr. Banger?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
So good evening, everyone. Happy to be here with you tonight. Wanted to give you an update on our schools and what's happening and what has happened over the past month. So District 25 schools had a very successful opening. I had the pleasure of working with Dr. Mike to open one of our schools, and it was so nice to see teachers and other staff members and our students together again. My staff and I have also been spending time visiting remote classrooms as well. We're off to a really good start, but also recognize that there's a lot of work to do. We're going to continue to work as a district to take on the challenge of moving out of this moment to engage in discussions on capturing how learning happens in our current environments. We're going to discuss blended learning and not just blended models. And we're going to incorporate all of our community members, administrators, teachers, support staff, students, and family in this work. Through the idea of what we're going to call chats, we'll be having deep conversations around learning within and across our schools. We recognize that during this time, everyone in our community is learning, and we're going to do this together. So yesterday, during our President's Council training, I did invite some of our parents to take part in our first parent chat, where we are going to be talking about big picture conversations about what learning looks like across our school and in our remote and blended world. School closures. You may have recently heard that the governor has updated mandates on measures that must go into effect across the city that are experiencing spikes in COVID-19 cases. One of these measures is closing school buildings in these areas. This new mandate has impacted the following schools as of October 7th, 2020. Please know that this is subject to change at any time, and Central has been very diligent in informing our principals with this information, which they are sending out to their communities. So the following schools will be closed for a 14-day period, and community spikes in COVID cases will be reevaluated within during those 2 weeks. So the schools are PS 201, PS MS 499, PS MS 219, and PS 165. For our other schools, student COVID-19 testing forms have been sent out to families this week, and Julie will speak to this tonight as well. Thank you, Julie, for being here with us. In addition to the paper form, digital versions are available via NYC Schools account, and translations of the form are available in all DOE supported languages. For parent guardian resources, including an overview of these forms, please see New York City Schools account website or call 311. After-school programs. After-school programs contracted through the Department of Youth and Community Development, DYCD, will be phased in this fall. Many programs have already started in-person services, and all programs are expected to be in person no later than October 19th. District 25 has a brief delay with that, but our schools are speaking to DYCD. For questions as to whether or not your school has access to DYCD after school or learning bridges, please contact your school's parent coordinator. I do need to go back because I did make one mistake in my notes. School closures also affect PSMS 164. So I want to go over that list one more time. PS 201, PSMS 499, PSMS 219, PS 165, and PSMS 164. So there's 5 schools. Okay, that's my report.
Thank you, Superintendent Domingo. So before I introduce to, well, actually, maybe the executive superintendent wants to make the introduction for our Director of Student Services for Queens North Borough offices, so that the public understands. She handles school climate and regarding disputes and suspensions and health and wellness, including immunizations and COVID testing, to my understanding. But I will let our executive superintendent give the official introduction, and then we can get started. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Mr. President, you are right. She covers that plus attendance, social emotional professional learning for staff members, guidance counselors. And so she will explain her role. She works with many of the different programs to make sure that students have wellness activities, as well as parent activities, as well as crisis intervention workshops for staff and for clinicians. So Julie, if you can come on, I want to thank her. She has a beautiful last name, but I will not mess it up, and she will share her last name. I don't see her on the screen yet.
I'm here.
There you go.
I'm here.
Nice to see you, and thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, President Di Benedetto and SAC 25 for inviting me. My last name is, I don't know how beautiful it is, but it's definitely a mouthful. It's Muchedlishvili. It's of Georgian origin. I am a Director of Student Services for Queens North BCO, which I joined a little bit more than a month ago. And as President Di Benedetto mentioned and Executive Superintendent Sardui, I am responsible for attendance intervention. I oversee the team who is responsible for attendance interventions, climate and culture, social emotional learning across the schools, crisis and de-escalation, counseling support, and I believe the hottest topic of the hour is health. So thank you so much for submitting questions in advance. And if you're a visual learner like me, I put all these answers that I could find to numerous questions into the PowerPoint. I'll share my screen and I'll discuss the school health policy on October 7th regarding random testing. Because the majority of questions, I mean, not the majority, 100% of the questions were around random testing. And I understand perfectly as a parent of public students myself that how important and critical this information is right now. I do imagine that even after that presentation, you're gonna have questions. So I will try to address as much as possible, as much as I know, but as was mentioned before, policy changes on an hourly basis. So this is as of 7/17 on October 7th. I'm sharing my screen.
After you select the screen you want to share, click the blue button in the bottom right-hand corner to start the sharing. You got it.
I don't know why it's closed. Okay, here we go. I'm sorry, it's been all fine until this moment.
No worries, take your time. So while you do that, I'm going to explain to the public. We had, CEC members had submitted some questions beforehand based on some concerns that we heard in the community. After we're done, if there are additional questions, I'd ask that you put it into the chat, or we'll have some public comment time at the end of the presentation.
Thank you. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see.
Yes.
Okay, great. Random testing. This is, okay. Testing will begin on October 9th, this Friday. Testing partners will come to every school once a month and test a randomly selected group of students and staff. A trained individual will conduct the test. Testing will be provided by, among others, by school nurses, city staff, and DOE partners, SOMOS, Bioreference Laboratory, and Fulgent Genetics. Under city staff, we mean Department of Health and Department of Mental Health and Hygiene. Test and Trace will provide a list of randomly selected students and staff to schools 2 to 3 days prior to day of testing. That information should be shared with principals. I do not understand why it's not moving. Just, okay, here we go. All students and staff on site for at least 1 day per month will be asked to submit a completed consent form. Parents, I believe you already received those forms, and as was mentioned by superintendent earlier, that form is available in a digital version, and it's also available in paper version, and it's available in all DOE, in all foreign languages that are being used in Department of Education. This form is valid throughout the year, so it's valid until September 30th, 2021. If the child does not, if you submit the consent form, but on the day of the test, the child does not feel comfortable, the test will not take place. The test is, I think, I'm sorry, I missed one slide. Okay. The test is easy, quick and safe. Instead of the long swab, it goes in the back of the nose. That was the test being used, especially in the spring and the summer. The test is short. It's a small swab, like a Q-tip, that goes just in the front of the nose for 5 or 10 seconds. There is an understanding that students may be nervous about testing, but the test is not painful and should not be uncomfortable for the child. The test should not take no more than 2 minutes from start to finish. The entire process of asking the students to come and escorting the students to the testing site from the classroom to bringing the student back should not take more than 30 minutes.
I'm sorry, did you say 2 minutes or 30 minutes?
The test itself is from 2 to 3 minutes. The process,
It's
not
30
more
minutes.
than 30 minutes.
Okay.
And it's the latest. Later the school year, it's possible the test will be administered by collecting a small amount of saliva, which is spit. And this test also will take not longer than 2 minutes. The approximate percentage of students tested. So this data was already available, but I would like to bring it to everybody's attention. This percentage only counts by the number of blended students. So it's not the entire school enrollment, but of the number of students who are in blended learning or in a hybrid learning. So 20% of random testing of blended learning students for schools below 500 students, 15% random testing of blended learning students for schools between 500 and 999 students, in other words, 1,000, and 10% random testing of blended learning students for schools above 1,000 students. To maintain classroom pods and reduce the risk of COVID-19 being introduced into the building, parents will not be able to accompany their children during the test. DOE understands that this may feel scary, particularly for younger children. The trained staff will ensure the testing is performed swiftly, gently, and in a positive environment for all children. On a completely different note, but as a head of student services in Queens Northern District 25, one of the work that we're planning to do with our schools counselors is how to support students who experience an anxiety and fear on the day of the test. To have an accurate understanding of each school population, testing for this program must be performed on a single day in the school building and by one provider. If your child is tested at an outside location and they test positive, you must keep your child home and report the test to your principal. This is in accordance to the health screening guidelines that came out on September 6th. However, no outside test can be counted in the monthly survey. If your child is tested, you will be notified that they were tested and when and how you will receive the results, which will typically be provided within 48 to 72 hours. Mobile testing units is a different initiative that started between Department of Education and Department of Health this week in the particular schools where mobile testing units are arriving to schools and providing testing for the community. They deploy, DOE and DOHMH deploy mobile testing teams to the neighborhoods with the elevated level of infection. Testing by the mobile teams is primarily to serve staff. Students can be tested only if parents are present. School principals should receive notification in advance to notify their school communities. In that way, they can notify the parents, and if parents would like to participate in that testing, they can do it. However, that testing is not going to count as a random testing. Any information related to in-school testing is confidential and protected under the New York City Health Code and other local, state, and federal laws. The information will be stored securely and only DOE and city staff will have access to test results by name and other personal information. This is the website that is available for the school health policy in terms of random testing. I will also, after I stop sharing my screen, I will put it into the chat so parents might have it as a reference. And I can imagine that this is an overview and you do have questions. And they already have them, so how would you like me to address it?
I'm going to start. I will then pass on to some CEC questions. And then I see that there's some questions already in the chat. We'll deal with that if you're okay with that, Julie.
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't mind if I call you Julie? I'm
No.
sorry. Okay. So thank you for your presentation. I just have a couple of starter questions. And look, I know from the community that there are these mobile testing buses that come to the schools, particularly 499, 163, to do the volunteer testing. And they usually get a result, my understanding, within 24 hours. And we really appreciate that as a community. But the question I have, I don't understand if, why aren't they accepting, if a student gets tested at the mobile test site with their parents, and then the next day or two, they do the random testing and that student refuses to have the test because they want to use the mobile testing results. Why can't they use that as part of the random testing?
Random testing is a citywide program that has to be implemented in all DOE schools, and that's how they count into the health survey. However, mobile testing units are only in the hot zones, and that's the initiative that was created just literally a few days ago, and it's not clear yet for how long it's going to maintain.
But if it's maintained already, if it started and the students get the result, I mean, I don't see why. It's not about it's about the test, right? So if the test result is there, I think you're going to get a lot of parents that are going to refuse to have their child tested again if they volunteer to be present during this mobile site testing, and the random test is done within a few days of that test.
I raised this question today at 3 o'clock in my meeting with Central, and I will. There is a legal teams at Central will be looking at if the test that's being done by the mobile testing unit can be also be the test instead of the random testing the next day. In other words, what are the ramifications if the child tests on Monday and then on Tuesday the child is selected?
Correct.
I'll follow up and I'll try to get back if that is possible, and if it's not possible, why it's not possible. But that question was already raised by other communities at one of the meetings today.
Understood. So when if you have an answer, you'll let us know.
Yeah,
correct?
absolutely.
Thank you, because that seems to be something that a lot of the members in the community are more comfortable with, because the parent can be present. And these mobile testing buses are, in fact, coming to the schools. So I just don't see why it would be separated. Okay, so I'm gonna, I don't know, let's start with, I know we have a bunch of questions here. I'm gonna start with, I know one of our, I'm gonna ask for volunteers from our CEC group, because I know they were quite vocal. And I will entertain a CEC member to speak up, and I'll give you the floor. Does anyone have questions?
Hey, Joe, it's Rashmi.
Hello, Rashmi.
Hey, how are you?
Okay, go ahead, Rashmi.
Thanks, Julie. That was a very good slide and very comprehensive way of giving us the information. I have actually a couple questions. I'll just lay out 3 questions that I have, or I should say a community would have. First is, if the COVID-19 random testing are already scheduled to start on October 9th, and one of the slides said that 2-3 days prior to that, the principals of those schools would have received the names of the student that will get tested. So that means that each and every school already knows which child in their school will get tested, correct?
In the schools that are supposed to have testing on October 9th.
Right. So is there a guidelines for those schools to inform the parents in advance that those students will get tested or not?
As of this moment, the principals are being told that the testing gonna take place, and on what day. We do not. Okay. And the school is supposed to be notified. The school community is supposed to be notified that on Monday is Columbus Day. On Tuesday, October 13th, there is going to be testing. So okay, if the parents who submit.
Okay. So the question is, it says that, will the schools be notified of the students that will be testing, or just the date that the test will happen?
At this moment of the date that the test will happen. And the principals notify the school community, then both students and staff, that they will be tested.
Okay, so my next question is the time frame. Even though it seems very small, 2 minutes to 30 minutes, it's a lot. It's a lot for a young child to get nervous. 2 minutes is a long time. What was the guidelines behind coming for this 2 minutes versus 30 minutes? For a child to get picked up from a class and said, you will get tested, and it takes 30 minutes for the process to get over, and then to have them done for 22 minutes. So is there a guidelines for parents on that? Because that's a lot. I know that from experience, from my child who's went for flu test and things like that.
I think I understand the question, why it's being done for 30 minutes, or what's the guidelines how to talk to kids about
Students,
the
yes,
test, to
like
students
because
about
2
the
minutes
test?
is a long time for, yeah. So has there been a talk that DOE is going to provide to the student prior to this testing period that, okay, you will be getting tested and what is the protocol and what's going to happen, or just one day randomly, okay, you are being tested, let's go, you have, and then the students don't know what's happening?
I understand. I believe that in one of the communication that came from the chancellor, there was conversations for parents to have the conversation with students, similar to the one that why the masks are important, that if the parents do give consent for testing, that the test will take place, it's not going to be painful, there is no reason to be afraid, and if you are do not feel comfortable and you don't want to do it on the day off, then just say that you don't want to do this and the test is not going to take place. And again, this is only in case if you do provide consent for the testing.
Okay. And then the third question is in terms of percentage, if I remember correctly, it's 20% for 500 kids. So it's about 100 kids out of 500 kids. So why is the percentage not in synchrony when the number of kids increase? Like what is the baseline on that?
It's a blended learning. Students that in blended learning. So for example, if the school has, if the school has 500 students who are in blended, that 100 students will be tested randomly.
So if the school has 1,000, did the slide say 15%?
If the school has above that 1,000, it's going to be 10% because the idea is that it's going to be the similar sample of number of students.
But that just doesn't make sense to me because more students in a building has more chances. So I just don't understand. I'm just not able to understand this math.
Well, 10% of 1,000 kids
is 100.
It's going to be 100, and 20% of 500 kids also going to be 100. So it's the same equal sample from each school.
So that's the criteria, to have same equal sample numbers from each school?
Yes.
Okay. So
for the
it's
survey.
Not the number of. Okay.
So thank you, Rashmi, but it's my understanding that the parents that sign the consent forms, they will go to those students to do the random testing. What happens if you don't have enough students that sign the consent form? What are they going to do?
Guidance is forthcoming on this. Unfortunately, I do not have the answer, and that was already been escalated to Central. There are two major questions: what happens if parents do not give consent, and what happens if there's not enough consent forms submitted per school. So I honestly, there are no answers at the moment. We know that's been escalated to Central for at least a week, and we were told today that guidance is forthcoming.
And then also tied into that would be if a student refuses to get tested that particular moment. So that number is not going to go in. What are you going to do in that case? Right? I didn't hear an answer on that either. What's the protocol?
If the student refuses to get tested, the student is not going to be tested. Do you mean that in case would that student going to be replaced by another student?
Correct.
Don't know. No, there's no answer on that.
Okay. And nothing would happen to, let's say my daughter refuses to get tested on that particular day. She's not going to be penalized, or she's not going to be asked to leave the school, would she?
No.
Okay.
Not on the moment. I do not know what happens if children do not get tested, if there's no consent. This is no guidance on this yet. You probably read in the parental FAQ on the letter that it's ambiguous statement that students might be asked to go to remote learning. So that what it means, there is no answer to this yet, and guidance is forthcoming.
Okay, and it's continuously changing. I mean, so we have schools that close because of the governor's order. My understanding is that we also have schools that are in the yellow zone. They're not exactly in the high risk zones, but I believe somebody advised me that these students were going to be tested every 2 weeks as opposed to once a month. Is there any accuracy to that statement?
No,
It's not?
I did not hear this.
Okay, okay.
The
So are
testing is, at this point, I'm sorry not to cut you off, at this
Mhm.
point, the random testing for each school is slated for once a month. We did
Understood.
not hear the 2 weeks.
Okay. Does any other CEC member have any questions? Thank you, Rashmi, for your questions. I didn't mean to interrupt you, for sure.
Yes, hi, I have questions. This is Tawana Rivera.
Hello, Tawana, go ahead.
Hi. Okay, so my first question is, why have the DOE parents been barred from accompanying their children at the school during the testing?
As per guidance, it states not to compromise the pods and not to ensure that any potential COVID infections are being brought into the building.
Okay, well, I was advised that there are other ways that the test could have been administered, as far as if there were tents set up in the schoolyard, if the school does have access to a large outside area, there could have been tents set up, as they did in my community as well, and have the parents join a line to have the children tested. That way there could be safety ensured for our children, as opposed to putting our safety in the hands of others, where we know even if you say a test is not going to be painful. I take my children to the doctor all the time for tests that are not painful, one little needle, and they're scared just because they see that it's a doctor or a nurse approaching them. It's the anxiety. It's not so much that the test is going to be harming them. It's just the idea in their mind that they're scared. They don't even understand what's going on for the most part. So why were the parents not taken into account when these plans were set out?
I completely understand. I will, the tent idea is, I think has been discussed for other opportunities as well. I will escalate it to Central and ask the question about the possible outside tent.
Okay, my next question is, I have read something on a teacher's website that may or may not be true. One of the labs that are going to be doing the swab testing of our children and the staff is Fulgent Genetics or Fulgent Laboratories. I wanted to know if it was just a rumor or an actual fact that there was an agreement reached where the labs would be able to use the DNA for other purposes other than just for the COVID, for other research purposes, that the city gave permission for them to use these results for other things?
I cannot speak of that. All the partners were contracted by City Hall, and you probably all heard about the contract with Health and Hospitals that in their stat contracted with 3 different labs that are going to be administering test and trace, in addition with Department of Health and Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. But I have not, on a personal level, I have not heard that rumor, and I do not have any information to confirm or not confirm the statement.
Okay, so if a parent wanted to find out if it was true, because it's posted on a teacher's advocacy website for the public to view, how would I find out as a parent if this is true or not? Who would I contact?
I would take a liberty to say that it would be Department of Health or Department of Health and Mental Hygiene.
All right, so my next question is, are the school bus drivers required to have the random or mandatory testing as all of the other staff and the students will be undergoing, or were they excluded from the COVID testing?
When I received the question on Monday, I escalated to the Office of People Transportation, and I'm waiting for the response. I didn't receive it yet.
Okay, my next question is, is there a time frame for when the saliva-based testing that is less invasive will be available for the DOE staff and children?
Soon,
Students?
soon. I believe the saliva test was just FDA approved in August. And
Okay.
we are in beginning of October, so as of per policy at the moment, soon.
Okay, thank you. And my last but not least question is, I wanted to know if there were parent advocacy groups involved in the testing decision-making process with the DOE, and if there were parents involved in this decision-making, who were the advocacy groups, or who were the parents that were involved? Because I know myself as a parent, I was never asked to take a survey or called into any meetings as a parent leader.
So that question to FACE and the part of the Department of Education that family advocacy and community engagement, and probably Esther, who is a family liaison on Superintendent DeMango's team, will be able to connect and get that answer.
All right, little one.
Are you able to answer right now, or you want to take that up later? Not you, Julie. I'm asking if.
No, I'll have Esther escalate that and see there.
And I'm not sure if Juliana, you're here. How are you? Good to see you.
Hi, thanks. I don't know off the top of my head, so I would also have to find out, but I'm happy to do that for the council.
Much appreciated. Thank you. I know I'm not cutting you off, Tawana. I know there's members of the public who have their hands raised.
Okay, that's fine.
Comments in the chat. No. We will get to you. I just, I'm not telling Tawana to stop. I just want the public to know. We see you. We'll get to you in due time. Okay.
Johnny, come here. Tawana. You're not in trouble.
No, it's okay.
Daddy,
that's actually my last question for now. That was my last question.
Thank you, Tawana.
Stop.
I'd ask that everybody please mute their microphone as well. This is a real world, and we have a lot of outside interferences, including my own house. So are there any other CEC members that have any questions for Julie?
Hi, Joe.
Hi, who's that, Victor?
Yeah, that's me.
Good to see you, Victor. Go ahead.
So my question is the short version, the one that is from not the long swap, but the short swap technique. What is the effectiveness of that?
Because we had a special meeting to discuss something else.
Oh.
That's, to be honest, I'm not a doctor. I'm an educator. So that's the question for the Department of Health about effectiveness. On a personal level, I was tested on the shorter swab and got the results. I hope they were correct. But that it's considered less intrusive and less scary because I can imagine those of you who were tested for COVID, I know that people were traumatized with the long swab that goes all the way up to here. I cannot speak of the effectiveness, to be honest. I'm sorry, I'm not a medical provider.
No problem. The reason why I ask that is because that if it's not effective and let's say asymptomatic symptom does occur, then what is the point of using the short one, which I like better than the long one, but I'm just saying that if it's not effective as the long one, then we still are missing the point of the asymptomatic symptoms that may be floating around.
I wrote it down. I'll escalate. I hope I'll get the answer from Department of Education because I mean that's people are also not doctors there. If anything, we'll be able to escalate it to Department of Health, and hopefully we'll get the answer. What's the effectiveness versus short versus long swab?
Great, thank you. My next question is the random testing. If you test it once, that's it. You're not going to be reselected again in time frame. Even if the amount of students are short, would they be?
The chances are that you will be selected. It can be, yes. The child might be selected.
Okay.
It's because of the percentage of. Not to cut you off, but if, for example, the school is 500 kids and only 50% of students are all remote, so we're talking about 250. So you talk about the 20% of those 250, and at some point, it's going to be a repetition. I mean, just mathematically. So yes, there is possibility the child will be selected again.
Okay, thank you. My last question is, I'm just thinking, like, it's just a personal opinion of mine, that the way the teaching set up to student is a one teacher to many student interaction. I'm thinking that if the teacher is not tested beforehand, wouldn't it be a high spread contributor to COVID-19?
Teachers are were encouraged when the school started to get tested, and teachers will have to participate in random testing as well.
Okay, thank you. No more questions. I'm done.
Thank you, Victor. I believe our CEC member, Anne Marie Knable, had raised her hand. She has a couple of questions. Anne Marie?
Yes, thank you so much. Just two questions. I'll make them quick. The first question is, will school staff be with our child while they're being tested by these outside companies? Okay.
Yes, 100%. Your child is never going to be alone.
Okay, great.
And as I mentioned before, we are training, if school councils or social workers support staff is available, we're in the process also of preparing training to alleviate fear and anxiety of students and support them doing the medical procedure. So we're trying to train, we're training school council social workers to do that as well. So hopefully if they're available on that day, they will be there with the child.
Okay, great. My second question is, who is picking the random selection of children? Is that being picked by the school administration or the group coming in? Who's selecting those random kids?
I'm afraid at this point, I believe that because it's random, it's the group comes in and brings their list of names, but that might change. So it's definitely not the easy answer. It's definitely not school administration.
Okay,
the school administration is being told who is going to be tested on that day.
Okay,
and it
thank you
goes
so much.
equally for staff and students.
So I don't think I understand the answer to that question. If they decide to do random testing at my child's school, who's picking the students?
Test and trace.
But where are they getting the names from? Is it from the consent forms?
Yes.
Okay.
So the consent forms, after they're submitted, they input into their ATS, which is the student attendance system. The ATS, Department of Education, together working with Department of Health and Test and Trace, provides the names from ATS of the students of consent, and that's how they're being picked.
Understood. So I don't know if the public understands. What's the percentage between staff, administration, teachers, and students? In other words, do you have a breakdown of how many teachers as opposed to students are being tested?
It will be the same. It's going to be 20% of the staff. 20%
okay.
of the staff of the school below 500, 15, and 10.
Okay. And we still don't know what happens to those students where the parents refuse to sign these consent forms, right?
No.
Okay.
As I told Superintendent Sardoui before the meeting, it's $1 million question. But no, at this point, the policy says students might be asked to study remotely. What it means, the guidance is forthcoming.
So on that comment, are you saying the students that don't sign the consent forms, or are they going to close the school because they don't have enough consent forms?
So there are two statements you're absolutely right, in the school health policy. One statement said that students whose parents did not sign consent form might be asked to study remotely. And another statement was if the school does not collect enough consent form, the schools might be asked to go to remote learning. The key word is might.
Superintendent, do you have any comment on that, or any guidance on whether or not they're going to close the schools? Because I'm just concerned about the parents that consent and want their kids to go in, and then they're forced to close down because they don't have enough consent forms.
They have not given official guidance, and as we said, this is the first week of testing for us. So I think as they roll out testing and see response from the community, they'll give us more guidance. Do you agree, Julie?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Um,
That question is being discussed on an hourly basis on all different meetings with Central. And yes, this is very hot topic at the moment.
And I'm going to put the link to the testing FAQ in the chat just because that will be updated also over time.
Oh, yes.
Always refer
Thank
to
you.
that.
Thank you so much, Louis. Yes.
Yep, no problem.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
thank you, Julian. I hope you don't mind our questions and no personal offense. We're just trying to get answers here.
Right. Can I ask one more question, Joe?
Go ahead, Anne Marie. Yes.
Wait, hold on one second. I just want to caution the link. Remember what I said about school closures and what Julie said about information today. So FAQs are also updated. So just make sure that you're checking them periodically before you continue to ask questions.
Yeah, don't print it. Always go to the website and check it. Check it
Okay.
every time.
So,
Go ahead, Anne Marie.
okay, based on that answer and some things that Joe brought up, so if the school gets 100 consents and they need 100 consents, then those 100 kids are going to be tested every single month? So you just, if you have just the max number of consents, those same kids are going to be tested over and over and over again.
There is a possibility that the same students gonna be tested every month.
Okay.
It's a percentage of a blended learning students, and as we know, parents may move students to remote learning at any moment. And
Right.
as we saw from September 1st to October 6th, the number in the city of students who went to remote learning doubled, if not tripled in the month. So yes, it could be the case.
Do we know if those numbers tripled because of the refusal to submit to the testing, or that's just, you don't know?
No, I believe the last numbers were at about 42% of parents chose remotely, and that was before the random testing came out versus 15% that was announced in August.
So I think the numbers are higher in our district. Superintendent, do you have that?
Wait, before I answer that, Julie, can I just clarify something? Because I just want to make sure that we're giving the right information. So we have consent forms, but the randomness, doesn't that come from who's in school on that blended day? So there may be students selected who we don't have consent and we won't test them. But
No, absolutely.
But they're part of the random pool, aren't they? So if they come to a school, they'll say to us, so I've selected Esther and Joe, and I say I don't have consent of Esther, but Esther is part of the original pool. They're not just gonna look at the consent forms. Am I wrong?
Well, they will come and they wouldn't be able to select Esther and Joe if Esther didn't submit the consent form.
So they only go by consent forms?
They only go by what an ATS and consent form. Yeah.
Okay. That's
because the way it was explained and the way as being understood is that whatever is school's input into ATS, which is only under consent, those will be the names that will be provided, and from there the random testing going to be selected.
So then students really aren't refusing because they won't even be selected.
Well, yes, but the Department of Education, Department of Health will know which students refused because they did not submit consent.
Okay.
You also have to think about the day of the week the children are in school. So just if they come on an A day in October, that doesn't mean they're going to come on an A day again in November. So your child might have consent for testing, but they might not be in school the next time the testing occurs. Does that make sense too, Emery? I kind of asked your question too. I see you nodding. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. To Louis's point, it's if the children are not in school, they're not going to be selected, even though they were tested in November. Yeah, right. A month ago. Yeah, it's.
So there might be a possibility where they go in to do the test and they don't. Let's say it's 100 students, and they don't test 100 students. Correct?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Because they come in with the names. They do not,
right.
I do not know if they're going to follow the blended learning schedule, and they definitely would not have attendance on the day off.
So I just question the point of having the test. It's not even going to be accurate. I mean, it's a policy, but the reality is you're probably not going to get the testing that you're looking for. And I'm just concerned about what the consequences are. But we'll move on. I'm not sure if Amory had any other questions or if there's any other CEC question. Eddie, are you raising your hand there?
Yeah. So we're talking about the parents who actually consented. Now, what if there's a consent form and the child is getting tested and the child absolutely refuses to get tested? Then what is your stand on that child at that point?
At the moment of the testing or after the testing? Yeah. At the moment of the testing, the child is not going to be tested.
Okay, so then what, do they just get sent home or do they?
No,
Okay.
they remain in the building.
Okay.
Yeah, that's absolutely clear. If children are not comfortable, and that is completely understandable, even if the parents provided consent, but the children are not comfortable and refuse to test, they're not going to be tested.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Thank you. Just 1 second, Rashmi. I'll get back to you. I just want to give the other CEC members a chance as well, and we'll come back to you. Eddie, do you have any more questions?
No, I'm good, Joe. Thanks.
Okay, I see Akila raised her hands, and Rashmi, I'll get back to you. Go ahead, Akila.
Okay, my question is, if the child refuses and the parent takes the child to the doctor and gets the COVID test done, is it going to be accepted? Because I seen something on a slide that said that it wouldn't be calculated if it's outside of the DOE. Is it the DOE just wants control of the testings, situation compared to a parent taking their child to the doctor and getting it done?
For the purposes of random testing program, that is asked to be done by Department of Education, the test at the doctor's office is not going to be calculated. It's not going to be counted towards the random testing program.
What I don't understand is the test should be basically done for the safety of the staff and the children. Why does it matter where the test is being done at for us to know if the child, my child coming into the school is safe? Why is it so important to the DOE to have control over the fact that the test was randomly done at the school or site outside, and me personally taking my child, making them feel comfortable, having the test done and bringing it back from the doctor?
That question was already escalated to Central when I received it, and also it's other communities raised the same question, that we were told that guidance is forthcoming.
Thank you, Akila. So I really don't understand what the purpose of the random testing is then, because it's, you're not accurately test. So if you have parents that are willing to take their children to their own doctors and test the students, and that's not being counted. So what is this random testing for? Like what happens if you have a certain percentage that come back positive? Is it just to close the schools?
Well, we know if it's more than two cases of positive case, the school is closed. The building is closed automatically.
But are they only using the random testing for that, or are any other testing doesn't really count basically?
No, because at this moment right now, if the students get sick and they sent home and parents are asked to test the students, and if the test comes back positive, it's reported back, it's reported to the school, it's reported to DOE, and the schools are, everybody is notified, all the students who are exposed, all the staff who is exposed, they asked to quarantine. If that's one case, if it's two cases, the school is closed.
I understand. So basically it's what the reality is and how many children or staff are actually infected.
Yeah.
But again, I don't know what the point of this random testing is and who pushed that, because to me, if they have their own specific guidelines and they're not using the real, world testing results, so what was the point of having this? It just doesn't make sense to me.
I believe to have a sample survey of the students in the same pod and the same cohort from the same school at the same time. That's the way, as I understand, the reason behind random testing was created.
Do we know who pushed for this random testing? Is it We don't know what the source is. Okay. All right. Rashmi, I'll get back to you. Rashmi, go ahead. Akila, you're done with your question?
I have a question.
Okay, Rashmi, you don't mind, right? I'll get to Monica. Go ahead, Monica.
I just have a general question regarding, you know how allergy season is coming up. Kids gonna have the sniffle. It's not COVID. They just have, they're sneezing. They have, their eyes are watery. The nose are running, but it's not COVID. It's all allergy related. How does that base on somebody sending them home, calling the parents to pick them up?
Excellent question. We encourage schools and educate schools to ensure that they know students' medical history before they immediately say that this is COVID related. I always say for the past month that flu is not canceled and that running nose is not canceled, that sniffles are not canceled, and we explaining to the schools that if somebody sneezes, you don't have to jump and ask for the hazmat suit immediately. So yes, and as a parent, the better communication with the school and explaining that yes, my child suffers from allergies, yes, my child might have a flu, will prevent from immediately phone calls home and asking the child to be picked up from the isolation room. So yes, it's definitely taking in consideration. Allergy is not immediately being labeled, it's not supposed to immediately be labeled as a COVID related. Even though we highly recommend if the child experiences and exhibits symptoms which are COVID related, because to go and test the child.
So, but what do you consider, like, let's say a child, you know, sometimes you get that sneeze that you don't stop and you continue and then all of a sudden you stop. What is the amount of, like, I have a friend who had a problem. Her daughter sneezed 3 times and they called her 3 times and she goes, I can't pick her up. And then they gave her a letter stating that, oh, she needs to be checked to see if she has COVID because she sneezed. What is the amount of sneeze do a parent gets called? I mean, because I thought that was ridiculous. I'm like, 3 sneeze? I mean, come on.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There are no amount of sneezes or amount of coughs, but we're working with schools and explaining that they need to work with the parents because that phone call home asking, does your child suffer from allergies? Was your child sneezing before? Do you think your child was exposed or in close contact with somebody who was tested positive for COVID? These are the conversations. It's one-on-one basis and an individual basis. But the more you, as parents, communicate with the school and explain to and tell them about what are the possible medical problems the child might have, the school will have more knowledge before jumping to conclusions that everybody has COVID.
Right, but isn't that the reason they do the health screen in the morning to find out if they've been in contact with anybody that has COVID in the last 14 days? Have they traveled? So they'll just ask again the same question?
They'll ask again if the child has, they will ask if the child has allergies, if you think the child has flu, or they might be COVID related. In any way, the parent will be advised to take child to test for COVID.
Okay.
So I think symptoms. Monica was asking about the criteria, right? What
yes, like the criteria, yes.
Is
like
the school using to mandate that the child get tested? And you're saying that it's up to the school?
It's one-on-one basis with every student, with individual student. If the school knows that the child suffers from allergies and child has asthma and or child has chronic cough, the school will work with the parents and family to understand if the child should be tested for COVID or not. There's no exact criteria what is considered to be should be child be tested or not.
Can I just layer in with Julie a little bit here is that we've been working very closely with all of our school nurses, in our health list to make sure that school nurses are aware of some chronic issues that students may be having, allergies being one of them. So that was reviewed with our principals and the nurses in the beginning of the year. So, and with teachers of students that have these issues, they were also made aware, just so it wasn't something that every time a child with allergies would sneeze, that they would be sent to the nurse. So there is that constant flow of information where if anyone does have any question or concern, they will call the school nurse and the school nurse will assess the child.
Are you okay, Monica?
Okay, yes.
Thank you. Okay, going back to Rashmi. Go ahead, Rashmi.
Okay, just to understand about, because these are minor children and parents have legal authority over minor children. So I'm only wondering, in the past, we were told parents cannot even consent for a school to give them a Tylenol if a kid has a fever. Kid has to sit in nurse's office unless a parent comes or somebody comes to pick them up. Something so small. So how is that rule or law or regulation or whatever has flipped right now, and we are being asked to do a consent form to do a testing? I'm not understanding. So it's coming back to what Joe has been asking, the purpose of that, and why even today, so you're saying that if this rule changes, now parents can put a consent form and tell the school, okay, my child is sick, I cannot be there before 5 o'clock. You have to give him 2 doses of Tylenol. Will that be allowed? Because it can't work on one thing, it doesn't work on the other thing.
I perfectly understand. That's the question for Office of Legal Services.
Right.
And
that's the question.
Maybe Superintendent Demango will be able to find out from the senior legal advisor about.
That's a very good question, Rosh. I will escalate that question.
Thank you. Rashmi, are you okay?
Yeah.
All right. Are there any other CEC members at this time that have any questions or comments before I go to the public?
Joe, I just had a question.
Oh, hello, Christine. I didn't see you.
I'm here.
Okay, go ahead.
I just want to, I came in late, so I'm sorry, I might have missed it. But the tests are being administered by a vendor. It's not a DOE employee, correct? So it is a certified health care provider that is administering the tests?
It's going to be a variety from a school nurse, from employees of Department of Health and Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, and by 3 testing vendors that were H&H, Health and Hospitals partnered with.
Okay, so they
yes,
are
it's going to be a medical provider.
They are trained health professionals. It's not just the gym teacher being pulled out of the school swabbing the child. I just wanted to make that clear that it was a trained health professional in some aspect of the health profession administering the test.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. I just have a quick question. So I understand that different testing facilities have different turnaround times, right? So does the DOE have any recommendations of where to get your child tested to have a 48-hour turnaround time, let's say, as the way you have it for the random testing, or what's the protocol on that?
There is a list of 22 sites that are priority for Department of Education staff and students to get tested.
I'll put it in the chat.
Yes, Louis, I was just about to say, if you
Perfect.
have it, that
Thank
would
you,
be
Louis.
great.
That would be great, thanks.
So at the website I'm going to put in the chat right now, it's at the very bottom. You'll see it for every borough.
Thank you, Louis. That's important to know. Are there any other CEC members at this time that would like to make a question or comment before I move on to our public? Okay, so I'm going, so you have, Eddie, did you raise your hand again? No, okay. So I'm going through as much as I can. I'm gonna ask Carla to help me out here. I saw a couple of raised hands.
I have Francis Gonzalez.
Francis Gonzalez, are you here, Francis?
Tiffany.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you. Thank
Go
you.
ahead, Francis. Nice to see you.
Nice. Well, you won't see me, but you'll hear me.
To hear you, exactly.
So I'm a little disappointed. I have to be honest, as a parent. I see that this is a big liability on the DOE, a violation of HIPAA, privacy laws, parents not being able to supervise their child. I mean, collecting spit from a child, I think that's horrible. The anxiety that these children are feeling right now just to be in school, not be able to play recess. I mean, I think the DOE should have taken more time to talk about how to do recess instead of taking it away. And instead they come up with this type of testing. I think that the minute that child leaves the school, they're exposed again to COVID. It's never ending. So, I mean, what's going to be next? Are we going to test them for HIV next? I don't think this is, for me as a parent, I don't know how others, I don't think it's acceptable. I think that, my son came home and said, Mom, please don't sign that consent form. And, I'm reading on it, and it seems like the parents who do, those are the kids who are going to suffer the most, because they're the ones who are going to be tested, and we don't know how many times they're going to be tested. It's better off that you don't sign it. And you know what? To tell a parent to go home if you don't want to sign it, I mean, obviously, if you're asking us permission, you don't have that mandate to tell us to stay home. It's almost like since the beginning, with all the lack of questions, is that they want us just to stay home, because everything is, they never even mentioned this testing when people chose for blended or not. And at this point, I want to ask, who is this trained individual? Is it a physician, a medical professional, or is it a teacher that's being trained on how to do this? I mean, I did lice check for many years in a kid's school, and if someone got caught even with maybe a possibility of lice, that child felt anxiety. I could only imagine with COVID. They have to wear masks. They can't sit next to each other. I mean, I don't really understand, like Joe said, what the purpose of this test is. I think it should be removed. And I think that what other parents said, if you need to get tested, we could do that on our own. I don't want anyone sticking anything in my child's or collecting their spit. And like another parent said, where is this stuff going? I think it's a lawsuit waiting to happen for the DOE. And I don't think that you guys should put yourself in that position and put us parents in an extra thing that we have to worry about. Thank you.
Thank you, Francis. So, Francis, I still don't know what the repercussions are if a parent refuses to sign the consent form.
Well, I got in my letter from my school, I think it said in the letter, I don't think it's from my school, I think it's just what they said, that you may be asked to remote. But again, is that a tactic that they're scaring the parents that need this school for, and I think, again, it's not fair. And for them, it just doesn't seem, Julie, that this has been well thought out, because they're still unanswered, and now you're getting into the kids' system. I just think it's I think it's a dangerous thing.
Understood. And I think we really need to know what the answer is, what the actual repercussion is if a parent refuses to sign that consent form. But point well taken, Francis. Thank you for your comment. I believe Tiffany has her hand raised. Tiffany, are you here? Hi, Tiffany. You have to unmute yourself.
So one of my questions was the healthcare professionals that are coming in. I know you said someone from the school will be there to watch the children get the procedure performed. What are the procedures that the health professionals are coming in? Are they coming from another school before they come into our school? Because what's to say they tested their random 200 people, 100 people, and now they got COVID from going into that school, and now you're coming into another school and testing another set of random. So that's kind of cross-contamination. We're trying not to do that in our schools, making our children not move around, and yet you have people who are gonna come in testing, going from school to school.
There is no guidelines yet, so I cannot give you the exact answer if they're going to be in the schools before they come to another school, of how many schools they're doing in the same day.
So Julie,
the guidance are forthcoming.
Yeah, so Julie, just so the community knows, I'm writing down all of the statements that are being made, and I will email them to you so you can escalate that to the chancellor's office for us.
I wrote a lot of them already, and as I think I stated at the very beginning, guidance is forthcoming for a lot of parts of random testing, and yes, we do not have a lot of answers yet, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, for not having answers, a lot of parents are uncomfortable. I mean, you know, like what everyone says, the kids have anxiety and stuff, but even for us, we don't want to put our children in that sort of situation. And if we're trying to protect them, then outsiders touching other kids and other staff members from other schools and then entering our building and doing the same thing, you know, when were they last tested too? Are they going to show some sort of consent or some sort of notice that says, yes, I am COVID-free before they touch my child or somebody else's child?
Well, again, there's no answer to this question exactly, but as you know, anybody who enters DOE building has to do the health screening.
Because I've even had parents say that when they read the form, it's almost like a threat to them. They feel like if they don't sign it, then my kid is forced to go remote. And that's not, they feel it's unfair because if they are a working parent and they did find someone to stay with their children the days that they're not remote, now they're being forced to sign this. So, you know, they're picking and choosing. Do I send my kid to school or do I not work? Like, how does that work?
I agree. I think the community needs to be advised of what the reality is. Is it, you know, the implications that might not be the reality, right? So they're trying to intimidate people to sign the consent forms. So that's a very, very important question, and you know, and it's critical. And I think the community needs to get an understanding of it.
Yes, I mean, you want your child not to be touched by someone who may possibly have COVID. And if we don't get the response back that healthcare professional is free and clear and did not come from another school, how do you expect another parent to be okay with them touching their child?
And then again, a child is a minor, so how would the child know what the protocol is, correct?
They don't.
We leave it in the hands of the administration who's with our child. But what's the protocol there in terms of how to administer the test, what PPEs use? Those are very, very important questions that are very critical. I think Akila raised her hand about something here. Go ahead.
Yes, I wanted to know, since this random testing is so important, why can't you give out, if y'all pick 100 students, you send a letter home to the parents and have on-site places where the parents can take the children to get these tests done so y'all can get whatever survey that y'all looking for. Because clearly the parents want to be comfortable. The children need to be comfortable. They're already going through a lot. It's stressful on the teachers. So if this random test is so important, why can't y'all find different sites where they set up? Y'all let those amount of students know, okay, you have 48 hours to go to these sites and get the test done. The parent is there with the student, and y'all can get the results that you're looking for.
Great question. We'll escalate it to Central.
Thank you. Carly, can you help me out here? Are there any other raised hands? And then we'll go to the questions in the chat.
I have a question.
Oh, okay.
Who's that? Eleni, how are you?
Yes.
Go ahead, Eleni.
Good, how are you? So they're coming into the school. So what is the protocol of them coming into the school? What room are they using? How clean is the room? They can't go into the nurse's office because the nurse is treating other students. We're already limited to the rooms that our rooms already used. So where are these tests going to be conducted in our school? Now, when they're being conducted, where are they placing everything? On a table? Is it sanitary? Are they changing their gloves? Where are they disposing everything? You know, there's a lot of things, like we can't go into the school. We understand that. They're coming in, but where? In the hallway?
This is a question to Division of School Facilities. We'll escalate and find out what are their guidelines in terms of location of administering the test.
But it's a very, very important point.
Like when you go for blood work, they change their gloves. Every single time they sanitize everything. They can't just say, okay, everybody line up. Let me do your nose, clip it, close it, nose. They got to change their gloves. They have to have a table where they're going to put their material on. And they have to have a room. And I'm pretty sure that most schools don't have extra rooms to spare right now.
Gloves are changed after every test.
Yes,
That is for sure.
but they also need to know where are they placing all the materials.
Yeah, we'll escalate to DSF, to Division of School
Yes.
Facilities.
And
And what room are they going to be using
Correct.
when they come into the school?
Correct. Also, I mean, I don't think school facilities is going to be supervising that the proper PPE is being administered. So that's a very important topic, Eleni. Thank you for that. And,
You're welcome.
thank you. Are there any other raised hands? Okay, so I see a lot of comments.
Christine has her hand raised. Christine.
Go ahead. Who's that?
Christine has her hand raised.
Go ahead, Christine.
I just wanted to say, I think that there's a lot of unanswered questions, and I think as a community and as a parent leader, I think that DOE and FACE and the Chancellor's Office really need to, pardon my language, but get their act together before throwing this on the parents and saying you have to do this. They threw this out. There was a lot of, I've been hearing all along through the whole pandemic, I attend many meetings, but a standard answer is, that's a great question, we'll get back to you. And then no one ever gets back with the answer. And I think that it really needs to be escalated, as this is an imperative. These questions that our community is raising need to be answered sooner than later, because parents are just going to turn around and they're not going to consent, and you're not going to get enough people to take the tests, and we're going to be back to square one again. So I really think that there's got to be more guidance, like now, not in 2 weeks, not next week. This has to be top priority, because the testing is a very sore subject within, I'm sure, not just our community, I'm sure citywide. So I just want to say that, this really needs to be a priority. That's all.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Monica.
What is the difference between the DOE test, COVID testing, to their primary doctor's office test? Why can't we just get the testing done in our kids' doctor's office versus yours? What is the difference?
As I mentioned, we escalated this question already this week. Why there is a specific need to do the random testing. The only thing that is said in the FAQ, that's done to ensure that there is a random sampling of students, test and staff test equally across DOE. And that is in FAQ that Louis put in earlier in the chat. But your question about what's the difference between random testing done by
I'm gonna put
versus,
that question in response directly in the chat so you guys can read it.
Thank you, Louis.
Yeah.
But that question about personal doctor versus random testing or DOE been escalated already this week.
So if there's so many questions, how are they starting the testing this week? It doesn't make sense to me. I mean, if we don't have the answers, why would they start the test? Why can't they wait until we get the answers before they start administering the test? I don't understand.
I agree with you, Joe. And I see a lot of hindsight that was not calculated in the overall picture, and everybody has raised one point or other. And one of the point is also, like, if the school system accepts an immunization from the doctor, why cannot they accept COVID testing? So that's one loophole. And the other one mentioned by different parents about the legal aspects. So there are like so many domino effects. It was just blanketly said and sorted out in a room saying that we will do random testing without understanding there are so many caveats to it. So yes, it is very disturbing right now.
So can we as a community or as parents make a statement to the DOE saying, look, we don't want this testing to start. You're not ready for the testing because you don't have the answers. So, I mean, how do we put a stop to the remote testing if that's, if there's a lot of open questions out there? I don't understand how they are facilitating this testing if they don't even have the answers. Something for us to discuss as a CEC. The only thing we can do is propose a resolution to the chancellor's office, but that's not going to stop anything. The test is starting Friday, correct? Is it this Friday?
They're slated to start on October 9th.
And the parents will, in other words, there's some questions in the chat, but there's 24-hour or 48-hour notice that the parent will get? So they would have known already, or by tomorrow they'll know?
From 2 to 3 days.
Okay, so if your child is going to be tested on Friday, we would have already have known, correct?
Should have, yeah.
Should have. Okay, so I'm not sure if anyone here received any notice.
What, by email? I mean, in the folders of the student? I mean, how would they
How is that
notify
being
us?
administered?
Using the regular communication processes that the school uses to notify.
Sorry, I have a question. Are the teachers being randomly selected as well?
Yes.
Okay, I would just be curious to see how the teachers feel about the random testing and what their standpoint is on it.
Good question. Thank you.
Joe, sorry.
Go ahead, Anne-Marie. I just don't want to lose Christine's point. I'll get to you, Anne-Marie.
Sure.
I believe the UFT is here. Is the UFT, Lamar, are you here?
I am here.
Hey, Lamar.
Yes.
Do you have a position on the UFT on this testing? That's an important question Christine asked.
Yes. First of all, good evening, everybody. Good to see you all again.
Good evening.
From the UFT's position, a lot of the questions that we're posing here are being presented by UFT members. So one of the differences is that, and I'll share this, if a teacher refuses to undergo the random testing, they cannot return to the building and they would have to go on an unpaid leave for 14 days. So that's the provision that that DOE members, particularly UFT folks, have to deal with. So you have that option. You can choose not to, but these are the, for lack of a better word, consequences involved with that.
So
You
my
have to
point
unmute, though.
is, no, I'm sorry, Joe, sorry. No, so my point is, if the teachers aren't happy, the parents aren't happy, like, what are we doing? Like, what did DOE take any of this into consideration? Like, did they really think about, I get the testing, they want to test to make sure everybody's healthy for the kids to go into school and for the teachers to be in school. I understand that. But did they really, and I'm going to say this again, did they listen to anybody? If everybody's bringing up the same questions, they hear, but do they listen? That's it. That's all I have to say.
Sorry, I'm muting myself. Okay, Julie, we're not taking it out personally against you, so please don't take personal offense.
No,
We're
I
just venting
perfectly
here.
understand.
Okay,
That's awesome.
but I just want to comment on Lamar's comment, because are you saying that the teachers are, it's your recommendation that we should all go to remote?
Are you asking me that?
Correct, based upon, yes.
No, we don't have a position on that as it stands right now. We haven't gone on record in saying that we should be going remote or so. So there's no formal statement, informal statement with regards to that. No.
So I'm not sure I understood your comment. So you're saying that, to avoid the testing, opt to do remote instruction, or are there other alternatives?
I'm not sure I understand. To avoid.
Maybe I misunderstood your comment.
So what I was explaining based on Christine's question was like where we stood. And if you're asking our opinion, admittedly, we have some members who have concerns, individual members. We have members who are not so keen on taking random tests. We have some members who are perfectly fine with it, and all in the name of safety. They're fine with it as well. What I was sharing was, what I was sharing was what the procedure, what the protocol would be with regards to testing or so. So if you do choose not to, there are consequences to that. But we have people on both sides of the spectrum. I don't want to speak for the DOE, but I would say that considering where we all were in March, and even where we are this week with 4 or 5 of our elementary and middle schools in those hotspot zones, and we're not even talking about high schools, that's another 5 or 6. I would imagine that safety would be the priority, right? Making sure that as you're in a school community, as an employee, or with children in the community, in a spot like a formal setting like schools where people are constant, even if the enrollment is lower now, there's still the possibility of people interacting with each other. So whereas our buildings may have been a hotspot in March when all of this fell, I imagine that the process would be, we want to take all measures to make sure that all precautionary measures to make sure that now in September, October, we know better. Let's see what we can do to reduce the amount of interactions and viruses that would take place in our schools. I imagine that would be the process, because that's what the UFT's process is.
But the buildings are not the hotspots, it's the communities, right? So those schools, those 5 schools that they closed, that the governor closed, they were not closed because the schools were hotspots. They were closed because the communities were hotspots. But I don't see why the students have to be penalized for that if they're observing all the protocol. They're wearing their masks, they're doing what they have to do. The question I have for you, Lamar, is what are the consequences if a teacher refuses to submit to the test?
So like I mentioned earlier, if a teacher refuses, there is a consent form for teachers to sign, and if they refuse, then they go on an unpaid leave for 14 days.
Understood. So what happens to the students, right? My child's math teacher refuses to go for testing. He or she goes on unpaid leave. My child's not getting an education for 14 days. Is that true?
Mm-hmm.
It's a problem.
I mean, it's an angle, it's a way to look at it, but now let's look at the other side of the coin, if I may. We have somebody in the building who's refusing testing. We don't know what their condition is, and my child is exposed to that person. That's another angle to look at it. So there's a lot of angles and a lot of ways that we can see this. I don't think, as I've been listening here and hearing from the last few weeks or so, I don't think there's one set answer, but there's definitely a lot of debate. And I feel like the idea is to come to a common ground. You know?
So can I just say one thing, kind of just piggybacking on what Lamar is saying that I think is also important to note is that, yes, we have our 5 schools that did close because of community concern, but we do have one school that was closed because of, test and trace, just doing exposure. And there were, after they went through the entire test and trace process, there was only 3 classes that didn't fall into the category of exposure. So I think, like Lamar said, it's important to know that there's a lot of different scenarios that can come depending upon what testing results show us. Additionally, what I do want everyone to know is that Julie works alongside me as well as Mabel, and what our families are exposing is that we have a lot of questions that do need to go up to Central that should be answered, and I think that's important. I have 3 pages of notes already, and to just really speak, and I know that Julie does attend a lot of meetings around this, and they do ask her for feedback, which I know that she will give, just around all of the questions and concerns that have not been answered yet. So I think the intent of this meeting was a very good one, in that Central and the Chancellor's office should know and hear your concerns, which we will say tonight that we will escalate starting tomorrow.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Julie.
to add to Superintendent Dominguez's point, some of the questions that I received on Monday were already clear that we do not have the answers. They were escalated immediately. Some of them, especially the legal questions and the reason for parents not being there and the doctors, those questions were, and why the test from the doctor cannot be counted instead of random testing, those questions were floating around since the first information came out about the random testing. So yes, it's we are as impatiently waiting for the answers, because as somebody mentioned before, probably every community in the city is asking the same questions at the moment. So as soon as we get the clarification, and I'm more than sure that it's going to come in the form of official school policy, that we will be able to provide it. Yeah.
So I just want to comment, and I say this all the time, and I'm not here to offend anybody, but I know the teachers are represented very well through their union, principals are represented, the DOE, but where are the parents represented? Where, we as parents need to know that the best interest of our students for rigorous education, for health, sanity, those are important. Our children, public education is based upon our children. So I just think that we need to be at that table, because you're making policy and you're just telling us what the policy is, but we don't have a voice before the policy is made. And I've always said this, and again, I'm not going against anyone. I just want to make sure that we as parents are represented and our children are, the best interests of our children are taken into consideration.
Okay, I have a question also.
I don't see, was that Eddie? Go ahead.
Yeah, that's me, yeah, sorry. How, do you have a sort of like a plan as far as the fallout? I just want to set the picture for you where even when students are getting tested for lice, one of the students comes back, they have lice in their hair, whatever reason, they go home, they don't come back. Stuff goes around with the students with, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And now you're having these students randomly tested, being brought out of the classrooms, and everybody knows they're going to get tested, right? And then the next thing you know, they don't show up for class for 2 weeks. I think, so I'm thinking like I don't think it's a matter of if, but I think it's just going to be a matter of when that one child just tests positive. And especially what went on for the last 6 months, and and everything like that. It's going to be worse than when you have elementary school kids saying, "Oh, you have the cooties, you have the cooties, you have the cooties." What kind of a plan do you have to, adhere to that child's social emotional, learning, if, God forbid, they did test positive and then they just disappear from class for 2 weeks?
I understand. So I can speak only for Queens North, and probably Superintendent Dominguez can add. There is a lot of emphasis and work is being done on professional learning and support of teachers and school counselors in terms of social emotional learning and development of our students and of our teachers and our staff. And there is a lot of work is being introduced about how to address this particular situation, how to ensure that every child is felt welcome, safe, nurtured in the school. And Superintendent Dominguez can tell more about what's going on in District 25, but I know for a fact there is so much work, and there's a goal to ensure that social emotional development of students in District 25 and in Queens North are in the forefront of this work.
Understood. Yeah. I want to go back to Anne-Marie because I interrupted her before. I'm sorry, Anne-Marie. Go ahead.
That's okay. Thank you so much. I just wanted to make a statement that as a parent, speaking not from a CEC, but as a parent, it's a little surprised coming into this meeting tonight and not getting an answer as to where the parent voice was in this whole process, because it seems like we're walking into October 9th with a myriad of questions that are unanswered, and the parents weren't part of that decision-making process and were basically being forced into it. It's just mind-blowing. It's just absolutely mind-blowing that we didn't have a plan in place before this was even rolled out. So many things are just put out there before they actually know A to Z. We're A to D, and then we're going to wing the rest of it. And it's like day by day. And it just doesn't seem very fair to the kids that I'm almost at the point now where it's like, why am I even going to send my child to school on Friday? Because I don't want her to be randomly tested. Because I just got the consent form. I haven't sent it back yet. They couldn't possibly have consents back even to pick the kids on Friday. We just got them. So it's really concerning that it was going to happen no matter what anyone has to say. And it's just not taking into account these issues, because overwhelmingly every parent on here has the same thing to say. And I haven't seen one parent come forward and say, hey, I'm okay with this. Let's do it for this reason. There are other ways to do it. Rashmi had some very good points about the immunizations. I can take my daughter to the doctor for any number of things, and that's okay with the school, but not this. It just doesn't seem right. It just seems like there's a big piece missing here. So.
Point well made, Emery. Thank you. Are there any comments, responses? I'm looking at the chat here, and I think a question was, are we able to push back the testing date? But I'm assuming that's no, correct?
At this point, we do not have any details on that.
Right. Are there any more hands that are raised? Carly, can you help me out here? I'm trying to follow the chat here. And
I don't see any more hand raised at all.
Okay. Does anyone have any more comments or questions? I see
just-
Lamar raised his hands. Go ahead, Lamar.
I do. I actually have one thing to share, a little bit off-centered. I actually wanted to take a minute to introduce Delcy Rodriguez. She's with the UFT and our parent liaison. So I thought from last month's meeting, it'd be a good idea to just introduce Delcy, and there's some information that she wanted to share to the parents. So you want Delcy?
Yes, good evening. Thank you so much, Lamar, and thank you, CEC 25.
So hold on one second, Delcy. I'm sorry. So are we going? I don't want to go off topic yet. Are you, Lamar, telling me that Delcy is going to comment about our representation with regard to the testing and the health screening, or is this something just as a liaison? I'm not following where you're
I thought
going.
we were.
I'm not done with the discussion, but if you want to finish it, we can come back later. Or if Delcy wants to make a comment about the health screening, I can, I'll give you the floor, Delcy. But I'll get to you.
Okay.
So Delcy, you're the parent representative.
I am the Queens Parent and Community Liaison for the UFT, for the Borough of Queens. And it's education, advocacy, and information for parents that we provide, also organizing and getting a seat at the table and asking people, trying to get answers for our parents, as long as support and advocacy as well.
Okay, so do you have any answers as to what the status is in terms of our involvement with the with the testing? Do you have anything to contribute?
What was shared this evening is what I have as well. But
So-
I can always take your concerns back and ask someone to try to get answers for you, and then I've been taking notes as well from the chat and from the conversation, and I can go back and get answers and get those answers to you.
So what you're saying is you are the representative from the UFT who has the contact with the parents.
For parents and community, you are
community,
correct.
but
yes,
through UFT, you're a UFT rep, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so is that the only means that we possibly could have to sitting at the table, or can
no, there's
No.
other means of getting at the table. I'm just an intermediary for you.
Joe, I think Juliana can escalate that, and Christine and Francis can escalate that on CPAC as well. That question.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, are there any more comments or questions regarding the health screening for the COVID?
I have a question.
Hi, Jasmine. Go
Hi,
ahead.
how are you? So middle schools and high schools began on October 1st, correct? Didn't they go back to in-person school on October 1st? So my question is, if they just went into school on October 1st, I received an email from my middle school that they were being tested on Friday. How did they distribute all of these consent forms to the different cohorts and collect them so quickly to already have a testing date for Friday when school started 6 days ago? And not even, because we had the weekend. So 3 days ago.
So Julie, do they have enough consent forms for the testing?
We don't have that information, but a lot of consent forms were distributed last week already.
We escalate that.
Yeah, we can escalate that
question
but
about that specific school.
Yeah, but definitely do understand that October 9th is going to take place only in a few schools. It's going to start. It doesn't necessarily mean that in every single school there's going to be test and trace at the door saying we're testing children.
Okay.
Thank you, Jasmine. Are there any other questions, comments?
One more thing. Do they have?
Who's speaking?
Eleni.
Hi, Eleni. I'm
Eleni,
sorry.
hey, do they have locations on where they're going to be testing them? Say they come into our school Friday. Do they know where they're going to go do it?
If they would be coming to your school on Friday, the principal already would have to notify you, and that location probably would be worked out between the
No, I'm saying for the schools. Has it been worked out with the schools for all the principals to know where the COVID test will be taking place? Will the room be ready for them, sanitized? That's what I had asked before. Are the schools prepared for all these people to come in and start doing these health screenings?
We can escalate the question.
Well, I can answer that just from experience. So they, the people coming in to do the testing do have a meeting with the principal the day before. And I will say, just in terms of cleaning that's happening across the district in every single one of our schools, that room would be cleaned and sanitized prior, which is the reason for the meeting. So the principal, where the testing is happening on Friday, she has a meeting tomorrow at 12 o'clock.
Okay. Just across the board, not just our school. You know,
Yeah,
it's just I'm sure everybody's curious.
That would be the procedure where they would contact the principal. They would make those arrangements. They would let them know of the things that they need, and that would be discussed prior to anyone coming into the room. And it was the same thing with the mobile testing that Joe was talking about. When they did come to the school, they were very clear on the things that they needed and why they needed it. So they asked for 3 tables, 2 chairs, garbage pails, and then the rest of the work was done through them, just in terms of disposals and organizing samples. That was done. And if any of you had seen it, you could see they were dressed in hospital gear, kind of suits with, just as you would see someone dressed in a hospital that was performing testing.
Okay, thank you. I just feel a lot of parents are scared. Like, I signed the consent only because I don't want my kids to get kicked out of school, and I don't want them to go remote, because they do need to be in school and get that part of their education, and get, all these kids need to get their life back. And then for me not to sign it, and then God for, just say my kid gets pulled out of school. So it kind of felt like like a threat. So that's what I feel the problem is across the board, that it felt like a threat. Like, most people signed it just to not have their kids being sent home.
Correct. Most parents that I've spoke to also feel the same. And again, we were not sure what the consequences were if we didn't sign. My wife and I believed that if we didn't sign, my daughter would have to opt for remote. So we signed.
Yes.
So,
that's what we all believed. Most of us, that's what we believed. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I know that Francis has another question. I just have a question for Julie regarding the testing. So how long will they be at the school? I know that it'll take about 30 minutes for a particular child to be pulled out of class and back, but are they going to be there the whole day, an hour? What's the protocol with that?
It's gonna, per child to take a test, gonna take from 2 to 3 minutes. So it's less than that. And to my understanding, as long as everybody who was selected for random testing is being tested, that is gonna be completed.
So they might be there, if it's 100 students, they'll be there for 300 minutes or so, more or less. I mean, it's not gonna be a whole day thing, correct? And again, very
And
important
also,
to know where they're being tested within the school,
and also staff.
with staff,
It's
correct.
students and staff, yeah.
Correct. Francis, go ahead, are you here?
Yes, thank you. I had asked this question before, but I don't think it was answered. Is the trained individual a medical professional?
Yes.
Okay, and my other question is, how much money is being spent on this testing?
We'll escalate and we'll ask that question. Please don't forget that the contract between City Hall and H&H that our mayor announced at the end of August, I'm more than sure that it's a public information, as most of this type of contracts that the City Hall does. So that will be, I'll find out, but I'm more than sure it's going to be possible to find.
I think another thing that parents need to understand, that if a test comes back positive, it is confidential. No one is to disclose the name of the student or staff member that has the infection, correct? So it's, parents could rest assured that it's not going to be held against them, or their child's name is not going to be made public, correct?
Absolutely. HIPAA and FERPA are being followed, definitely, yes.
Understood. Are there any other questions on this topic before we move on? Tiffany, your hand is raised again. Is that a
Yes.
new one? Okay, go ahead.
My question is, since we have a lot of questions that you're going to escalate to Central, will you be coming back to let us know answers? And normally, how long will it take for them to give you answers on all these questions?
So I will, as soon as I'll be getting them, I will be providing them to Superintendent Domingo, and I understand that she also will escalate them and will cooperate on how they're going to be delivered back to SAC and to parents. Please do understand that some of these questions were raised not just by me, but the entire city, and we've been waiting for a while. And as I also stated, I believe that a lot of these questions will come back as an amendment to the policy or as an FAQ, because again, the questions that you are asking are the questions that we hear across the city, across different communities, and people in the same position, me, who work for Manhattan or the Bronx, come back with the same questions from their parents.
And my second question is, if parents don't sign the consent form, are they legally allowed to shut down schools?
That's one
I mean,
of the...
to put that in a form that a parent has to sign, I mean, that's a document that we're signing. Is that a legal document that they can legally close a school because not enough parents signed a consent form to do a test that they don't know who's administering it to their child?
The consent form is a vetted document, and it's vetted by Office of Legal Services at DOE.
Okay, so then you're telling me that they can legally close down a school if enough children aren't tested?
It's not, we go by what it says right now in the consent form. And if it is in the consent form, I'm more than sure that it was approved by all the legal providers and attorneys. I do not know, as we discussed before, and nobody at this point, we do not have that officially in the policy, what are the ramifications for individual student if the parent does not submit consent, and what are the ramifications if it's not enough consent forms for the particular school. We go by what it says officially right now in the school health policy, that students might be asked to go remotely, and that the school might be asked to go remotely completely if it's not enough consent forms.
And my last question is, if a child is chosen, say, 3 times randomly, at some point, can a parent deny and say, you keep picking my kid every month randomly? Like, if they don't have enough consent forms going in and they're part of that group, a small group that said, yes, you can test my child. I mean, after a certain point, parents are going to get aggravated too that their kid is constantly being chosen randomly.
The parent has the right to revoke consent at any moment.
Okay, thank you.
That's
Good questions, Tiffany.
Thank you.
So this is all new stuff because we've never been down this road. This is, the pandemic has caused a lot of things to change. I just want everybody to understand, regardless of this testing, if the governor decides to close the schools down, like he's done with the schools that were the 5 schools, other than the one that we found, we're closing down. And so I don't know, honestly, I don't see the point in the testing because I think, it's going to be taken away from you because the governor is going to decide whether or not he's going to close the schools, right? So we're all going into uncharted waters, and we're all very anxious and uptight. And I just think this random testing creates more anxiety, unnecessary anxiety. That's my opinion.
So Joe, I will make this commitment to you and the community, and alongside Julie and with Mabel, is that what we've revealed today is that we will be that voice and escalate these concerns, and they are real concerns and they have been heard to Central. And we will continue to follow up, and me, I am that person. We will continue to follow up until we do get those responses. And as Tiffany said, we will find a way to get them to the community, even if it's through the CEC, however we're going to do that. So, but there were a lot of really good questions that were asked tonight, things that were not answered. We realize we need to get answers for you, and we're going to commit to do that.
So I believe that, and we appreciate that, and we thank you both. Before I close off the discussion, I don't want to leave anyone out. If there's someone that has something to say before we move on, I'd ask that you raise your hand and let me know.
I actually have something to say if you don't mind.
Go ahead. Who's speaking?
Daniel, it says my life, but the name is James. I have a question about all this testing and reporting and how this is being connected to the situation room that the mayor keeps praising is being run by the Department of Buildings, not the Education Department. So when you guys are giving these tests to all these kids, and basically this situation room is controlling whether the school closes, and if you close a classroom or clean a classroom, how are these tests that you're submitting our children to being communicated back to the agency that's running the situation room for you?
So, yes, excellent question. Few clarifications. Situation room does not control if the building is closed or not. This is a DOE and city policy that if there is one child in the classroom is tested positive, or any adult in that classroom tested positive, everybody who was exposed to that contact quarantines for the particular time, and the whole community is notified there was a positive COVID case. If there is more than two cases in the school, not from the same classroom, the entire building is closed. And it doesn't necessarily have to be students, it can be 2 different teachers, and the building will be closed. What situation room does, it supports and streamlines the process when either the student is getting tested outside and it goes immediately into the database of a DOHMH, and they notify the principal that this particular student or this particular staff member tested positive, and provide the notification for the community. The same way, if the teacher notifies the parent before it ends up in a DOHMH database, they notify the situation room, and situation room in there provides information and the letters for the community. Situation room is a command center, but they do not make decisions about the closing. That was done by the city and DOE policy that came out, I believe, either in July and August, what's going to happen if somebody is tested positive. And that was discussed together with DOE, DOH, DOHMH, and UFT and CSA. These are all were the partners that were involved into creation of that policy, how, based on which COVID cases, it's closed. how random testing is connected to situation room. If out of those 100 students, 2 more students tested positive, it goes immediately to the situation room, who immediately notifies the principal and provides the letters for the community. That's, again, the situation room is a streamlined support that makes this process easier for principals and for DHH.
So again, I did not hear parents as part of this negotiation or part of the meeting, you know.
I actually have I believe faces here, so maybe they can, I mentioned the partners that I definitely know were part of that policy, but I might be missing which, and Face probably would know more which partners, which parental groups and advocacies were part of that policy.
Are you able to answer that, Juliana?
I don't have an answer, Joe. I don't. But this is, I really think that Anne Marie made the point very clearly, and it's at the top of my list, and I should be able to get something to the whole community later this week.
Thank you. Thank you. So I want to thank Julie. Before I thank you, Julie, for your time, we've been on this more than 2 hours. So again, I apologize if we are pressing the issue or we're being a little harsh here. Are there any other comments on this topic or questions for Julie?
Hello, Mr. Benedetto. My name is Rosemary. I have a question.
Hello, Rosemary. Go ahead.
So I have 2 young children, twins in kindergarten. And if they are randomly selected, let's say, they are going to be taken out of their classroom, I presume, going into a hallway, I presume, and going off to another location within the school. So I understand there's this whole 6 feet guidance, but are other children from other cohorts and other classrooms being taken out at the same time that potentially pose a risk to my children who could, in fact, have COVID and pass it on to my children? What sanitizing techniques are being taken when these children are being tested?
As the policy states at the moment, the pods are not going to be broken. So for example, if class A gets 3 children randomly tested, those children are going to be in that vicinity and they're going to be randomly tested, and they're not going to be in the same vicinity to minimize exposure of the students from the pod B.
You know, and I can also speak to movement in the schools, because I've been visiting schools across the past 2 weeks and I have seen it. And schools have been doing a really good job in ensuring that students do not mix, that pods stay together, that individual classes stay together, that students are maintaining the 6 feet, that masks are worn. I've seen that across all of our schools, but also in response to you, Ms. Chu, we do need to get that answer to the question that was asked earlier, which is sanitizing during testing. I think that's a very important question that we're going
And then I have one last question. I did post it in the chat. So my children have an appointment next weekend to get their flu shots. Typically every year they come back with a low-grade fever a few days later, and they may exhibit some symptoms of some coughing or sneezing, whatever that may be. How does that affect my health screening every day, and will my children be able to go to school?
So we can say, and Julie, correct me if I'm wrong, that if a child has a fever, they cannot be in school. And you know, I think this pandemic is different than other years that we may be administering flu shots, and we do have to be precautionary just around symptoms that may be similar to other types of illnesses, but your child, in essence, with a fever would fail the health screening questions that we ask students to take and staff members to take before they enter schools. So I don't know normally what an individual person's response to the flu test would be, but fever or COVID-like symptoms would flag concerns. Am I correct in that, Julie?
Absolutely.
Understood. Rosemary.
I also want to add that only students in grades 1.
Go ahead, Louis.
Louis.
I'm sorry.
Only students in grades 1 through 12 are involved in random COVID testing in school.
then
Yes,
why did my children who are in kindergarten receive a consent form sent home?
So, I mean, Julie can maybe talk about the timeline, but that detail was just recently shared. And I'm not sure if...
Yes, students in kindergarten are not being tested.
And pre-K, correct.
Yeah, pre-K, kindergarten are not being tested.
Right, but I want to reiterate the testing piece is, but that's not in response to her question though. If a child does come to school with a fever, kindergarten or not, they would not be granted permission to stay in school.
Yeah, there are two parts of it. The first one is that if your fever is 100 degrees or above, it's the child automatically fails health screening and we're not going to be allowed. And as Superintendent Dominguez said before, everybody has different reactions to the flu shot, and we understand that it's very individual. Your child should have not gotten a consent form because the child is in kindergarten.
So there are two different things. There are two different things. There's the screening, regarding if it's a flu-like symptom, and there's one for the random testing. So those parents that submitted their consents for pre-K or K, do they have to specifically revoke them now, or are they going to be, in other words, where's my assurance if I have a kindergarten student that I signed the consent form and now I don't want my child tested? It's not supposed to be.
So that's actually an excellent question. I will escalate. It's probably a human error, but at some point it should be caught because all those consent forms are put into the database, but I will escalate through, I will escalate it central in terms of if there was in case a mistake.
And I will reinforce that. We have a principals meeting tomorrow. Louis and Dr. D'Antona and I will enforce that at the principals meeting. So principals will catch that.
Understood. And there's a comment here. How is that random if you're excluding parts of the school, right? So why stop at kindergarten? Why not stop at third grade? Or why, who made that decision? You probably don't have the answer, I understand, but that's just a question I have to throw out there, right? Where do you draw the line, right? One more question, and then we'll probably wrap it up, Julie, because I know you're on for quite some time and you're in the hot seat there. But what about false positive tests? I see that in the chat here. What's the protocol for that? Is there any protocol for false positive tests?
So any positive test is being reported to the situation room, either through school or through DMHMH, and they do their own investigation about test and trace. If it's, what are the next precautions in terms of false positive? If it's needed, sometimes retesting is being asked. I imagine that in that case, the parent will be given the information from one of those partners where the child should be tested if it's retested if it's false positive. But the false positive only probably will be indicated if it says not detected or inconclusive.
Okay, so the parents seem to be asking if they submitted unknowingly the consent forms and now understand a little more, what do they have to do to revoke that? Do they send a letter? Is there another form to revoke? What's the procedure?
They send a letter in writing that they revoke the consent to the school principal, and then the child information should be deleted from the database that the consent was given. And that's done on a school level, locally, in terms of controlling that database.
Understood. Okay, so
I have a question. This is
go ahead,
Monica. So if, like, let's say I signed my son's consent that I'm okay for him to get tested. So if I change my mind and I say I want it to be removed, does that mean that he automatically goes remote then? Because I don't.
Guidance is forthcoming for that.
Okay.
So we're still left with a question before parents decide what to do, basically, because if we don't have the answer, I don't want, parents may not want to penalize their child. Danielle, you have a comment?
Yeah, so what I can say is that I do know is that parents won't just be told tomorrow your child is remote. It is a process. It is a conversation. It will be a meeting, whatever the decision is. So I don't want parents to think that we'll take your child, make them remote, and not allow them to come back to school if we don't have the consent form. Because I think that's what's coming out. So, but there will be conversations between the school and the family that will be reported back to Central. Before we don't know what the result is, but whatever that is, it will not just be automatically without having conversations with parents.
Understood. Thank you. So I want to thank Julie once again. Just one more question here. I see I'm trying not to exclude anyone, so I'm sorry. The results, my understanding, are received within 48 hours.
48
right?
to 72.
So does that result, the parent gets it at home, or is it during the school day? And what happens if there's a positive, does a child get pulled from the class? What happens?
The parents gets the results.
And is the child pulled from the class if it's a positive test?
The child is escorted to the isolated room, and the parent is being asked to pick up the child. It's the same procedure if the child is in school and the parent receives the result of the testing that was done by the doctor, and that the child is COVID positive. It's the same exact situation.
Or if the child develops a fever during class, exactly.
Or symptoms, yeah, it's exactly the same.
Okay.
But I saw one of the questions in the chat, because obviously after the test is being taken, the child is taken back to the classroom.
And so I understand that the protocol is if one child in a class is found positive, that class is sent home. Basically, they're remote for the 2-week, whatever, the 2-week period, is it? Correct? Yes. But the school is not closed, correct? But if there's two, Danielle, can you just
two
remind
cases,
the
yes. So if it's one case in the classroom with the teachers is sent to quarantine because everybody's considered to be exposed. If it's 2 cases from the same classroom, it's the same rules. If it's 2 cases across the school, then the entire school is sent to quarantine.
Only time will tell, right? Julie, I want to thank you for your time. I don't know if you have any closing comments. Somebody say, did I miss somebody?
I just have it's me, Monica. So wait a minute. So in order for them to go back, they will have to get retested. If you say if they're positive, they have the COVID, they close the classroom down, right? If there's 2 cases. So in order for them to go back, they will all have to be retested?
No, they're quarantined for 2 weeks.
Would that be enough?
Well, that's their regular procedure right now.
No, they would have to pass the health screen, Monica.
And health screening, definitely, yeah.
No, I understand that, but so they wouldn't have to get tested again?
No.
They'd have to pass the health screening, which asks questions about, in reference to testing positive for COVID and extended time. So no, they would have to pass the health screening.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
The health screening that your child does every morning, it's about if visited any countries that are on the list, that if there is a fever or any COVID-like symptoms, if it's was in close contact with anybody who tested positive, or of anybody who.
But what about when a child is asymptomatic and don't have any symptoms and is positive?
It's
so it is the screening that the health screening means nothing then. Because I could just say it by my child. Yeah, my son, we all had it, and he was asymptomatic. He had no symptom whatsoever until we found out that he had it. So the health screen means nothing. He'll pass it with flying colors.
I mean, Monica, that's why we've been talking for 2 hours, right? About testing
in that situation, yes. But
about testing in schools, right?
If the child is randomly tested with no symptoms but comes back positive, then that's the point of doing the random test, correct? I'm assuming, right? Because for the asymptomatic child or staff member.
Or staff member, yeah.
Correct.
So can I ask, so if one child in the classroom tests positive, they don't close the whole classroom down?
They close the whole classroom
They
down.
do close the whole classroom down
Yes.
for 2 weeks.
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
And that's already happened in our district, right, Danielle? I mean, we've had some schools that there was an infection and they closed and they reopened with no problems. So it's not, you know, there's an end result. It's not that they're closed forever or, you know, for a significant period of time. So that's important to understand. Julie, again, I want to thank you for your time. We have a lot of questions. We hope to hear through the district office somehow how, you know, if you can get our answers to the district office, which can circulate it to the community. I don't think we need to do another special meeting, but I'll talk to our CEC members on that.
Excuse me, I got a
Go ahead.
quick
Who's
question.
got a comment there?
Hi,
Can you
Keith
identify
Chu.
yourself?
Yes, Keith Chu. I'm actually Rosemary's husband. So the question of the day would be is this, right? If for some reason our kids get tested positive through the school, and we take them to our private physician, our pediatrician, and they get retested and it comes out negative, what happens then?
Both of the tests are being provided to the DOE database where DOHMH will have to confirm, and then it's an investigation done by test and trace, which one is correct test.
But for the most part, you still fail the health screening because it says you test
Yeah.
positive in the last 10 days for COVID-19.
So basically, you're saying the DOE testing supersedes the pediatrician's testing?
No.
No, I'm saying that it's going to be investigation because both DOE testing and pediatrician testing going to be in the database for DOH, Department of Health. And they will do their own test and trace investigation about why one test is showing positive, another test is showing negative. But as Louis said, until that is cleared, students who are tested positive for COVID fail the health screening and not going to be able to come to school until that's cleared up.
Okay, thank you.
Understood. Once again, Julie, thank you for your time and your patience. I'm going to conclude that portion of our meeting. Lamar, I hope you're not offended that I interrupted you before, but I just want to give Julie the opportunity to, if she wants to say anything in closing or if she wants to leave the meeting, she's more than, you know, welcome to do that. I'm going to move on with our meeting. So, Julie, do you have any departing comments?
Thank you so much for having me. I understand the concerns and the worries, and I understand that we do not have a lot of answers yet, but that was an amazing forum to escalate and to hear from the parents and work through the amendments to the policy. And as I've been saying for 2 hours, these are not just concerns of District 25. We hear that across the city. So I'm more than sure that at least 99% of your questions and concerns will be answered in the form of a policy. But as Superintendent Dominguez said, we will work on getting into as many answers as possible. A lot of them already escalated before this, so hopefully you will get responses soon.
Thank you, Julie. And once again, have a good evening, and we appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Really, thank you, your preparedness. Thank you. I know that Lamar Hughes had touched base regarding keeping parents informed on initiatives between the UFT and the DOE. I didn't mean to cut you off, Lamar. I just wanted to get off the topic because it doesn't just relate to health screening and testing, it relates to things that are happening. So, and maybe you want to make a brief statement and introduce Delcy once again, so parents know that there is somebody that can do some outreach.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Joe. My mistake on that. I just misplaced where we were, misjudged where we were in our discussion. So that's my mistake. I heard, we're going to wrap up, and I said, oh, we're going to wrap up.
No worries.
My mistake on that. So I'll be brief. It's running late. I'll be brief. For those of us who were present at the last CEC meeting, there was a lot of conversation and talk about remote learning and remote instruction. And I said in our closing pieces that I was hopefully going to have some information to share with parents that they can refer to as a point of reference for what that remote structure would look like. I just wanted to provide some links that I'm not sure who I can pass them on to, but if Carly is on, maybe I could pass them on to her and I don't know how that would work.
I'm here.
Okay. So there are two DOE issued series. They're called office hours, and they're not UFT generated, but since the UFT was in conversations and negotiations with the DOE on remote learning and such, we feel like these would be adequate information to share with everyone. So I'm going to pass that along, and it gives some really good information on the differences between the synchronous and asynchronous instruction, the remote learning, the blended learning, the fully remote learning and such, and really have a good point of information for people to understand what's going on in our schools. And I'm not sure, I saw Delcy putting on her information on the chat. Delcy Rodriguez is our UFT Queens parent liaison for Queens, and we have a forum in November that Delcy was going to speak to. Are you still on, Delcy?
Yes, thank you, Lamar. As I said, we have our annual parent conference, which will be held on Saturday, November 7th. It is free, it is open, it's also in different languages, as well as having parent power hours monthly. And again, these are free workshops open to everyone in the city, and it ranges everywhere from academic support, how to use a Zoom, how to help your child with online classes, as well as if you have children with IEP, do you need advocacy? Do you need, more information and more support? As I said earlier, that's what I do and that's what I'm here for. I put my number and my email on the chat. Please use it. If I do not have the answer for you, I will attempt to get it, and I'm here and I'm at your service.
Thank you, Delcy. Appreciate it. And thank you, Lamar. I don't know if there are any other speakers. Carly, you there?
I don't see anything else.
Okay. I just want to go back to Superintendent DeMango if she has any comments regarding this evening's meeting or follow-ups or closing statements.
I just want to thank you for really running a very productive meeting, and I want to thank the rest of the board for doing that. It gave me a lot of information that I can send up and speak on behalf of the community. It also gave me insight on how to present it to the Chancellor's office, just around some work that we need to do as a city to make sure that you guys get the information that you need. So I want to thank you for this tonight.
And we want to thank you because I know you're always there and you're more than willing to step up to the plate. So thank you. Juliana, on behalf of FACE, I don't know if you have any comments you'd like to make to the community before we wrap this up. Not putting you on the spot.
I don't have any comments. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you. I know you have some questions that you're going to put out there, and we appreciate if we can get some answers, hopefully, so we better understand. Other than that, is there anything on our agenda that we need to discuss before we conclude this meeting and move on to our business meeting? Do I hear any motions to end our meeting?
Motion.
So moved.
So Ed Kim made the motion, and
I second.
I see Brooke made the second of the motion. So at this time, I want to thank everyone. I'm going to conclude our meeting. I think it was, although we don't have the answers, it was rather productive because we know where the parents stand, and your voices hopefully will be heard. And I really appreciate everyone's comments and questions that were well thought out. And let's hope that we see a light here in terms of what's going to happen with the random testing, and let's see what happens with the school closures or not. And, hopefully everyone stays safe and healthy and they put that message across to their children when they go to school to follow the protocol. I believe we can do it. And I want to wish everyone a good evening. So I'm going to ask if we could take a 2-minute break before we start our business meeting with our other CEC members. Although it is a public meeting, you're not, I thank the members of our public who are here. We've been on for quite a few hours, so you're free to stay if you'd like. We're going to just discuss a few items of business, but I'd like to take a 2-minute break if you don't mind. Okay?
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great night, everyone.
Good night. Everybody stretch
Good night.
out.
Thank you. CEC members, if you just hang on a few minutes because we have a business meeting, but thank you everyone else.
President Donald Trump, who brought all of that experience 4 years ago.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good night, Joe. Good night, guys.
Good night. Who's that, Margaret?
It's me.
Check your email. I just sent some stuff for you and your PAPTA.
I will. Thanks. Good night, everyone.
Good night, Margaret.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, Deborah.
Carly, you there?
I'm here.
Someone's saying that they submitted a request for public comment.
Oh, hold on. Let me see. I didn't see.
Have a nice night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, Tiff.
Good night.
I'm just seeing this now. I wasn't looking at my email. Hold on. Oh boy. She wanted to address the council regarding I-ready assessments. I have her name and phone number and email.
She's still in the meeting.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't see the email.
Mm-hmm.
I'm back on. We'll wait a few more minutes.
Joe,
No.
did you hear?
No, I just got back. What did I miss? I'm sorry.
I missed a public comment because I didn't see the email. I didn't see it. It says she was it's from PS. It's from PS 184, and she wanted to address the council regarding I-ready assessments.
Okay, is that parents is here right now?
Marielle, Miss Deb?
Hi. Yes, I am here. Hi, everybody.
Marielle, I apologize.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay. I know.
If I know the district office will come back to this meeting if we can help you during our business meeting. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, we didn't leave. We're still here.
The district office is still here. So before we start the business meeting, I'll address your question. I'll give you the floor. Okay.
I'm sorry. I waited patiently through the meeting because I feel like I've brought this issue on the wrong night because obviously there was a very specific, almost singular topic of discussion since 7 p.m. And what I wanted to speak about is completely not related to that. But I did think it was important because obviously as incredibly pressing as the concerns of parents of children who are in blended learning and who are in the building are, ultimately concerns regarding the content and quality of education for children in general remain paramount. And as a parent of 2 children who are in a fully remote capacity at this time, I wanted to express, generally speaking, the immense frustration that I have experienced this week with my children. And I felt it was imperative for the CEC to be aware, for Mr. Mango to be aware of the lived experience of what's going on in terms of how there are a myriad of resources available. And when parents are logging in through Teach Hub with their children, there are many things available to them. And I understand and I respect and I accept the fact that in such a tumultuous time, there's going to be an exploratory period to try to figure out what resources work best and why. And I don't presume to be an expert. But with that being said, my 2 children worked with Lexia in the spring months during remote learning. And I found that in my my day-to-day with them to be a very, very rigorous, incredibly tailored, tightly developed program. It was extremely responsive to their specific literacy needs in terms of building their skills. It was an incredibly well-developed program, not only as a platform in terms of its visual and audio engagement. It was well-designed for younger children, but it was also rigorous, but it was very, very specific. And if they made errors, it would redirect them in an incredibly focused way back to specific areas in terms of sound recognition with letters, recognizing phonetics, being able to understand sentence structure, and so forth. By comparison, Lexia has disappeared from the litany of available resources at this time, now that we're for a full year of remote learning, and God knows, and God forbid, how much longer beyond. And instead, my children were both given an iReady beginning of the year assessment to take this week in first and second grade respectively. The teachers sent a simple message informing parents that this was something to be completed. It wasn't advised to us exactly how long the assessment would take to complete, and ultimately it would turn out that that was an assessment that could take evidently well above an hour in order to be completed. I say this from experience because one of my children, who I tried to engage with this assessment, was working for an hour, and the progress meter showed that she was only 45% of the way complete on the assessment. And I was shocked because she's in first grade, and I was observing the questions that she was being asked. And I'm getting into specifics for a reason. But she went from answering questions about identifying the sound of the middle letter in a word like pup, P-U-P, a 3-letter word. And she was getting those questions correct. And all of a sudden, in the span of several questions, it leapfrogged into, and by the way, let me make one very important point. All of those questions that she was being asked had an audio tool feature on the side. So the question prompt and any and all answer choices could be read aloud to her as she navigated the assessment autonomously.
Understood.
When
So,
she had
not to cut you off, Mario, because we usually allow 3 minutes of speaking time. However, I think we met before. You came to a couple of our CEC meetings because I recognize your voice or your name, perhaps. And I do apologize that I did not give you the floor during our meeting because I was asking for someone to raise their hand. But again, I think the superintendent's on, and she can answer your question, or she can reply to your comment without cutting you off, unless you want to get to the point of some, what else you have to say.
I'm very sorry. I'll make this very fast. But it leapfrogged to showing 2 full passages which had multiple paragraphs in them with no audio that would allow it to be read to her. And it was like 4th grade compare and contrast reading comprehension passages. And this was in the same assessment. And I reached out to her teacher immediately with my concern. She reached out to the administration, and the feedback that she got, and then subsequent emails which were received from the school, were advising everybody, don't assist your children with the exam. It's okay for them to get things wrong. It's an assessment. I wasn't assisting her. She was getting incredibly easy, appropriate questions correct. And then the system algorithms seemed so poorly calibrated that it would accelerate to something so astronomically unrelated. What I want to explain is that being told, let them go ahead and get it wrong, is not realistic, because a child who's sitting at a computer getting extremely upset because you've suddenly tasked them with something that might as well be asking them to read Egyptian hieroglyphics is absurd. And if you have another 60 or 50% of an assessment to take, I can't expect my 6-year-old to sit at a computer being asked to do reading comprehension that is literally years beyond her abilities in order for metrics to be compiled and data to be aggregated about her getting everything wrong, any more than I should turn to my child and say, just click through everything and click a random answer. That's irresponsible. And so money has to be spent on making choices about these programs. And I just hope that the CEC can know that there are resources that are not excellent choices for younger children. And I'm sure these programs cost exponential amounts of money, but I've come to learn that the iReady program is loathed by teachers in
Okay.
plenty of other schools. And so I just think it's very concerning that something that's so poorly tailored to how students are doing, and when parents are expressing concern, that it's about, it's okay to get it wrong. That seems to really miss the point. It shouldn't be, go ahead and answer 100 questions wrong in a row and we'll go from there. That is not what an assessment should
Understood, Marielle. So thank you for making that comment. Yes, it's a little bit off point of our main topic, but I don't want to ignore what you have to say. And I believe our superintendent can, make a comment on that. And well noted what you said. Superintendent, are you able to make a comment on that?
Yes. So just thank you for bringing that up, because I definitely feel that this is part of what I surfaced in the beginning of my report tonight, is that we are all in this learning phase of what learning looks like in what we call this new idea of teaching and learning in a remote and blended world, right? So what does remote learning look like? I will say, and I do appreciate your comments and your experience in this, but one of the things that we have encouraged our principals to really dive very deeply into is this idea of knowing your students well. And therefore, it was recognizable to me that assessments would be given, and that language and perhaps communication, there was a breakdown in communication just around, we don't want parents to feel that we're accusing them of taking assessments for their children, or things like that. But we do want authentically to get to see how students are unpacking these assessments, because it helps drive our units of study, the standards we prioritize within those units of study, and how we look at the needs and the skill levels and the talents of each and every child in a class. So I also do believe that the conversation that we're having around what assessments are good for our schools should be held at the school level. I am going to disagree with you, Ms. Stack. I don't believe people loathe iReady the way you said it. Actually, a lot of districts across the state use it. And so I think that is a conversation that can happen at the school level. Both Lexia and iReady and other assessment tools, parents, educators should come to the table and discuss the strengths and the weaknesses of each of the assessments, but both of them are research-based. So I don't want anyone here tonight to think that us giving iReady to schools is something that is just random and arbitrary. So iReady and Lexia are both research-based, and they've been measured against other tests. So it indicates reliability and validity in the outcomes. So what we're talking about is some students' responses to those. And I absolutely think parents, right now, what we are saying, parents having a seat at the table, communicating what they see at the school level should be heard. It is something that we continue to reinforce. And actually, it's what Dr. D'Antona and my work tomorrow is with parents around what learning looks like, how we're assessing learning, how we are working with students in the remote world, as well as parents. So I believe that you bring up a concept that should be discussed, not just individually between your child and your child's teacher, but perhaps at an SLT meeting, and really talk about what do we do in our school in terms of assessments, and why are these choices made. And you seem to have a lot of experience and understand the makeup of those tests. And so I do encourage you to start there and have those conversations. But I think Although you may not value one over the other, there are schools that parents are very comfortable with iReady. So I would say to really start that conversation with your school. And as we start to do parent chats, assessment is part of them. So Mrs. Stack, I would like to invite you to be part of that. But I believe that
I would be happy to. I appreciate that very much.
I believe that school-based conversations are a really good place to start.
Yes, I agree, Mario, that it really is something that you need to address at the SLT level, right? Because that's something that starts with your school. And you make good points. And this is probably something that a lot of parents are going to see now as they monitor their child's remote instruction that perhaps they didn't realize when their kids were off at school. So I appreciate that you made those points, Mario. And, I would advise you or, ask you to, start at the SLT level. And thank you for your comment.
And thank you all for your time. Sorry if I was a little verbose with trying to explain it. I wanted to try to illustrate the substance of what I was describing so it would be a little more better understood by everybody.
Understood. So we're at a remote meeting here. So typically we only allow up to 3 minutes of discussion to the public. So I was a little bit lax on that because I want to be fair to everybody. So I appreciate, I hope you understand, and I appreciate your comments. And again, I'm sorry that I did not see you raise your hand during the public meeting. But I'm glad that the superintendent was able to respond.
And by the way, Mr. DiBenedetto and Ms. Domingo, I would just like to take a moment remotely to say thank you to both of you, because from previous meetings where I was asking questions about playground and the school construction authority, the project proposal that I put forth for the construction of a playground at PS 184 made it through Mr. Vallone's office, and $500,000 was awarded to the school. And the Queensborough President's Office pledged another $500,000. And Mr. Vallone's office contacted me over the summer to inform me of that great news.
That
so I just wanted to pass that along to you.
And that's where I
Thank
remember
you. Yep.
Yes.
Thank you.
And we thank you for reaching out to our elected officials. That's where I remember you from, Mario. So thank you for your involvement, and thank you for accomplishing that.
Thank you for everything you all do. I really appreciate your work and your time. And thank you guys very much.
Have a good evening. I appreciate it.
You too, and be safe. Thank you.
Thank you. You as well. Carly, I want to move forward with our business meeting so we can, I know what time, it's almost 9:45. These meetings got longer and longer. I'm sorry. Let's do the roll call, and then we'll look at the minutes.
Okay, ready?
Are you able to post the minutes? Yes.
Yeah, just let me do the roll call first, okay?
Go ahead.
Joseph DiBenedetto.
Present.
Christine Caniglio. Isn't Christine on here? She left? Okay.
She was on, she may be off.
I see her.
Rivera.
I'm here.
Hi, Christine. Okay. Tawana Rivera.
Present.
Rashmi Krishnaraj.
Present.
Victor Lee. Lily Wajianti. Lilik's not on? Okay. Akila Sorio.
Present.
Monica Patino.
Present.
Edward Kim.
Here.
Brooke Sturgeon.
Present.
And Anne Marie Knable.
Present.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a quorum present, right? Carly, if you just post the minutes, we can get that approved.
Yeah, hold on. Give me 1 second. Okay. Zoom meeting. Shared screen. September minutes again. Okay, hold on. Okay.
Carly, you're getting good at this. I'm proud of you.
Lewis,
That's what happens when Lewis refuses to share his screen and scroll.
He's the worst. No, thank you, Lewis. I appreciate it.
Okay, so that was pretty quick what we did there. Are there motions to approve the minutes?
There's typos.
Oh, I see it. I saw voted.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. And then you forgot the name on number 6, the second one who adjourned the motion.
What did I do here?
And number 4 is tab to the right.
I'm gonna fix this. I didn't realize. I
Thank
think
you, Monica.
not the one that I.
Carly fell asleep. while she was doing the business.
It was late. It was after 10. It was after 10 p.m.
No,
Our meetings are
Yeah,
gonna
it ended at 11:04 p.m.
Yeah, we did.
God, yeah.
It was 1 hour.
We were talking about the town hall and the touch bases, and everybody was going on about whatever it was that we was talking about. It wasn't a
So,
specific.
Carly, can you make those corrections? The
Yeah.
council, you're not voted, right?
Yeah, no, no, no. I'll
Spelling,
fix this. I don't know what happened. I will
fix
fix
the margins.
All right. Sorry.
Subject to those revisions.
You wanna next meeting? I'll fix this and then you wanna vote on it then?
Yeah, I mean,
I think we could just
I
vote
think
on
we
it
could
now
vote on
and then
approving
make
it
the
subject to those changes.
All right.
Any motions to approve?
Motion to
Motion
approve
approved.
with the changes.
All right, I heard Monica, I heard Christine. You got it, Carly?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, great. So let's move this a little quick if we can. I just want to, reading the other minutes, and I want to thank, is Juliana still here?
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Juliana. So we got your email this today, I believe it was, where you confirmed that the chancellor put on his calendar for March 3rd for our town hall, which is good news. Between now and then, I'm sure a lot will be happening, but it's in the books for March 3rd. So Carly, just make note that it's official and confirmed with our chancellor, okay? Other than that, business-wise, I know that our 2 new members are officially on, correct? I'm not sure if there's any training that they have to undergo. I did discuss with Juliana. We had a touch base. I don't think all our members were present a couple of days ago. I don't remember if it was last week.
Last Thursday.
Okay. And I just wanted to know if Juliana has any news for us regarding any formal training for our members that might need it.
So I would like to, there's a check-in scheduled for next Thursday. And I'd like to use that time as an opportunity to provide some training for the whole council, or for anybody who can make the check-in. I'd like to go over general roles and responsibilities, make sure everybody, I think Carly recently sent out the manual in PDF form, but if you don't have the CEC manual in PDF form, just go over some housekeeping items. And I think it will be really beneficial to the whole council. So, and then in terms of something that's centrally organized or that's organized by FACE for all new members across the city, there isn't an update on that. So that's one of the reasons why I'd like to just go ahead, and I've been to a number of orientations and I can provide some basics.
Okay, so yeah, I think that's important because I think we need to know as the CEC what our roles and functions are and what we can do or what we can't do, and protocol in terms of making motions and Robert's rules and whatnot. So I think that's kind of important. Thank you. So that we can discuss at our touch base, but I want to touch base with all of you of what happened during our public meeting. I mean, I think the message is really clear from the community that there are a lot of questions out there about this testing process. And I mean, I am of the opinion that maybe we need to do a resolution to the chancellor and to the city about what the community voiced, right? So did anyone else get that? I mean, I think, I would call on making a resolution to stop the testing from happening until we have our answers. What are your thoughts, guys?
Are we able to do that?
Well, I think Joe, I think you need to clarify what exactly a resolution is and what that exactly means.
I can give you my version, or I could probably rather have Juliana tell you the official meaning of the resolution. Are you okay with that, Juliana, or can I comment on it.
Sure. A resolution is a very formal way of the CEC making its position known to the DOE. It needs to be presented in writing to the community for comment. You've already taken public comment into consideration. There's a standard format to be used, which I'm sure some of you are familiar with, and I can send a template or a sample resolution to the whole council if you'd like to see what one looks like. And then the council votes on it, and that is the most formal way for the CEC to make its position known to the DOE, and then the DOE is forced to provide a response.
But it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to do what we recommend.
Absolutely not. No, many things that CECs make resolutions on are subject to, in some cases, they're subject to state law. And at that point in time, I would definitely advise you of that ahead of time, because, some things that we want to change as parents in New York City are actually things that are controlled by state law. And oftentimes issues that are controlled by the chancellor's regulations, which would have to go through a revision process to be amended, or they could be agreements that would have to be entered into between multiple offices or multiple divisions. That does allow Adrienne Austin, whoever the deputy chancellor is, to really hear your point and to hear it made very strongly. But that's it.
Understood. So what to put that into what happened tonight, it's clear that the community has a lot of questions that were not answered. This protocol was developed without parent involvement. Parents, including myself, agreed to sign these consent forms, not really knowing that they didn't have to. So it's clear that that things were done, and we have a lot of questions. So it's not about the testing; it's about the procedure or the protocol. And I think a resolution is a nice statement that we make to the DOE in hopes that we can be heard in the future. Because again, I believe that parents consented based on the discussions tonight more out of fear that they're going to be forced into remote and really without knowing much about the protocol. So that would be something that we would have to do a resolution on, correct? To make a statement out there. And it's kind of forceful, but we would have to all be on board with it, and we would have to agree on it and vote on it, correct?
Yeah, 6 of you would have to vote for it.
So I know I am the chair, but can I make the motion? I know I can make the motion. I'd like to make a motion for a resolution.
I second that motion.
Who is that?
Akila.
Hi, Akila. So can we have a vote on it? Or maybe we should be a little bit more specific what we want, what I would, what you Akila, want to put into that resolution, right?
Yeah, at this point in time, you're just voting to begin to work on a resolution.
Okay, so we should vote that first before we have discussion on it?
You can, you can just do sort of a show of hands, a yay or nay, if you want. It's up to you as the chair.
Since Carly, you're there, let's go through the roll call.
Okay. Joseph Di Benedetto?
Yes, resolution.
Christine Caniglio?
Yes.
Tawana Rivera?
Yes.
Rashmi Krishnaraj?
Yes.
Victor Lee?
Yes.
Akila Soria?
Yes.
Monica Patino?
Yes.
Edward Kim?
Yes.
Brooke Sturgeon?
Yes.
And Anne Marie Knebel?
Yes.
So we're unanimous of present members on preparing a resolution. I know it's really late. I think maybe we can form a subcommittee or have another meeting and discuss it. I can try to draft some language in a resolution, and we could take it from there. I don't, does anybody want to talk about it? I know my brain is a little fried right now, but does anybody want to talk about it right now?
Just want to know, can you just bullet point what topic we'll be covering on the resolution?
So, I mean, I'm talking specifically about testing, the random testing, because that was the topic tonight, right?
Right, but what point are we voting for resolution to have outside providers, be part of that instead of just DOE, or are we asking to not have testing at all because it doesn't make sense, and because it could be repetitive and it doesn't make sense to be random?
It's not necessarily about the testing, but the process. So we would have to go back. I mean,
I think maybe our resolution should say.
Go ahead,
Can I say
Danielle.
one thing? And Juliana, you can either agree or disagree with me. So a resolution doesn't necessarily look to solve the problem.
Correct.
Because there's certain, so at the end of the day, and I'm going to be, I have to get some clarity for myself around some of the topics that came up, because I was going back and forth between what the governor had said yesterday and what the mayor is implementing. So I didn't want to speak too much to that, but from my understanding, the governor is mandating. I need to get clarity on that. So at the end,
I did just send. I also was looking for clarity. I sent it.
So I'm going to get clarity and communicate that. So I don't know if you writing a resolution is going to say we don't want testing, because I don't know if that in a pandemic is the case. But
no, that's not what we're saying.
Right.
It's more about the process, correct?
Right. From what I heard from families tonight, I mean, it puts me as a superintendent. I've already scheduled 2 meetings tomorrow, just really talking about a lot of questions that parents were asking. And I found myself, going into the lens of a parent and just saying like, wow, they don't have the answer to that. They don't have the answer. So like, I do think it would surface. I mean, even with our parents, they weren't saying they were against testing. They weren't saying that. And I do think it's important to note that in a pandemic, one of the things that we have proven is like testing does control spread, right? I don't think that was the case. So I mean, maybe I'm wrong, Juliana, in saying it in the way I just said it, like you don't look to solve the problem, because certain testing, I do believe in some way will continue. But
I think it's the process. I think it's all the process, how they're doing it. Because, I mean, I'll be frank. I'm very transparent. I signed the consent just because I felt like, damn it, if I don't sign this consent, that means the boy's going to be back at home and me working from home and them trying to help them schooling. It's really hard. So it's like it puts the parents against the wall and say, well, let me just sign it so they could, hopefully they don't get selected. But that's why I did it mostly, because it was like, I felt like it was either you sign it or not. If you don't sign it, they're going to be back home. If you sign it, they're going to stay in school. So I think it's mostly the process and how everything is being done.
I think also that they left out the parental involvement. The parents were not involved in this planning process at all.
And I don't know, and Tawana, I thought you asked some really good questions. We couldn't answer that. There may be an answer to that. I don't know. But I think as a CEC, you're asking for that. Like, why don't we know that? And is there an opportunity? Was there outreach for other people to be involved? I don't know. So I think you guys surfaced a lot of really good details and points to say the process of testing, it still left the community unclear. And therefore, in terms of a pandemic, you want clarity for the community around something that is being mandated.
Correct. I believe, again, there are so many questions out there, so it really touches upon the process. So a resolution will say, look, whereas this is a problem, or whereas this happened, and whereas that happened, and then we call for a solution in terms of making a statement. So I would think more on the line of, look, before you mandate this the random testing, you need to address X, Y, and Z with the process and then move forward. Because again, it's not necessarily like everyone said, it's not about the testing, it's about the process and what's entailed, and how are parents assured that their child is safe even with testing?
So I guess, Juliana, I was incorrect. So you do make recommendations, but the recommendations shouldn't go as far as kind of like getting deep into the medical piece, I guess, and that's where you want, because I don't think that was what was brought up. It was more community communication, right? And time.
Can I also say that my main problem with this is the random selection piece. It's not really random if you're only going by the kids that have consents, because you're having a limited number of consents and you need so many kids that you have to test. So if you have an equal number of kids to test and an equal number of consents, then your random pool is your pool. That's it. Does that make sense? That's how I'm seeing it.
I want to clarify that for you.
Okay.
That was confusing to me too when I heard that. I was like, wait a minute. So I'm going to get
that part of the policy had changed a little bit, right, Danielle? Like, it's not what we originally heard.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. That didn't sound right to me either.
And I actually tried to correct, I inquired about it and I got the same answer that Julie was saying.
It might have been changed. It might be.
Yeah, it could be. And that would be something you would put in the resolution.
Right.
Right. Yeah, I mean, Joe is exactly right that there is a whereas section, like where there is a whereas, and then there's a list of all these issues are just like the status of things, and then be it resolved that the CEC calls on the DOE to do X, Y, and Z. And I mean, I agree with you, Superintendent, that that the public wasn't asking us to get into that, wasn't asking the CEC to get into the medical field. In terms of, in terms of what you say, be it resolved, you can say anything you want. I would advise you to keep it within what the DOE can respond to. But it is absolutely, the CEC can say, can offer a very specific solution, can offer a very broad solution, can offer no solution at all, and simply say, please post this, or,
I was thinking more on the line as, whereas there are so many questions, whereas it's not clear where this testing
bullet
is
the questions.
conducted, bullets of questions, and then resolve that the DOE hold off on the implementation of the the testing until there are more clearer answers and the community is advised of what's on the procedure.
That seems very reasonable to me.
That's to simplify it. But we can, let's talk about it. So the thing that the thing that troubles me is every day something new is happening with DOE. Schools are closing. I'm worried that all the schools are going to be closed down. So this might be a mood issue, right? Or it's just every day some stuff is changing. It's like, I don't think even the DOE knows what's going to happen tomorrow, right? It's just, so we can, put our efforts into this, and then it means nothing if they close the schools, right? But I'm sure they're going to reopen them, and then they're going to do testing again. So this is something that's going to be recurring.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
So can we, does anyone want to, form a subcommittee that we can work on it? We don't have to, if we work with the subcommittee, then we don't have to have public meetings, correct, Juliana?
Yeah, I mean, a resolution can simply be drafted over email. You voted on the fact that you want to work on it in your business meeting. Like you can't do anything with it until you bring it before a calendar meeting. Resolutions need to be presented to the public, except in cases of like hiring an AA or something like that. But you should bring this resolution before the public. But drafting over email is fine.
Okay, so maybe I could start with Carly helping me on a model, and then
I emailed it to you already.
Okay.
I emailed you our safety one just now.
Okay, I know we did
See
one.
what it looks like.
I'm not looking at it tonight.
I know.
I'm not, but I'll pick up on it. I don't know. Does anyone want to join in on that committee? Anne Marie's raising her hands. Brooke, Eddie? I can't see anybody else.
Does it matter that I'm fully remote?
Who's that?
I still have concerns.
No, of course not. So you're a parent representative. So it doesn't necessarily have to be your perspective individually. You represent parents in your community. So that's not a problem.
And one day you might not be fully remote. You might choose to go back.
Right.
You'll be in
Crossing my fingers.
And it's good to get all perspectives. So why don't we, Carly, you know what, Carly, why don't, we could do this after tonight, figure out who's on this committee, and then we can start communicating and then preparing.
Carly, do you have the other resolution that the CEC wrote about?
Yeah, that's what I sent. I had the safety one.
No, the school food one also. The
let me see if I find it in this,
that one actually was used by the mayor to, he used it in a decision that he made to make school food free for middle school and for middle school students as well.
So that was a while back.
I don't think I have that one then, because I don't think was I there for that? Was Evelyn?
Evelyn might have been there, but you could ask Morris for it, Joe. He might have it.
Okay.
I'll email Morris and ask him.
Carly, you should have a record of these resolutions.
Yes, but not in a laptop.
It's in the
I'll
building?
go to the office and get it.
All right, see if you can get it. I know we did one for the safety on the
I have
safety
that
issue.
one I sent you.
And I don't think we did one for the homeless. I think
No.
that we voted on that. Okay.
Oh,
so-
didn't we do one for the C? Didn't we do one for the C-shot, whatever you call that?
I believe
No.
Shazat.
Shazat. I remember we worked on one with Tommy Coe. What was the one? That wasn't the safety one. There was one with
Shazat. I remember that also.
Yeah, that was with Tommy Coe.
Carly, why don't you look at what we have and then we'll take it from there, right?
Okay.
See
But
what
like I said, for now, I emailed you the safety resolution one, and they're all pretty much the same with the same format.
And Juliana, you have examples too, right?
Juliana, yes, because I know Diana had helped us with those resolutions in the past, and I know there's a protocol. They try to be as brief as possible. And,
Right, and then it's supposed to have the therefore in capital.
Correct.
Remember we went through.
I'll
I
look
felt like
for
we were typing legal documents again.
Yes. So I think that's good. So Carly, we can do this after tonight's meeting. You can just, circulate an email of who wants to be on the subcommittee, and then we can start working on it. In the meantime, if the district office can get the answers from from
Julie.
That would help because we do have unanswered questions. So, and I think the community needs to, speak up on that point. Having said that, is there anything else you'd like to talk about during our business meeting before we conclude, before 11, hopefully? Anybody? Any other items of business?
Well, I don't know if it's business. I have an issue, and I wanted to speak about when it came for the children with the IEPs. A lot of the schools are not accommodating the students with the support that I was told that they were going to have, starting with my own child. I just found out today that the school doesn't have a set for him, and that they had to go outside the school in order to provide him with the sets. But the school never contacted me until I started pressing the issue about his IEP. So I'm trying to find out who I need to get in contact with now, because it's, how many other parents are having problems working remotely from home and their children are not getting all of their services.
So I could tell you that from talking to the district office, and Danielle, I think you probably talk to me more than you really want to talk to me. And I'm sorry, we talk all the time, but there's a lot going on. And I know that I could tell you, Akila, the district office has been working round the clock, 7 days a week. Everything, there's a lot of things that have been happening with schools closing, this pandemic, the governor's announcement that even the DOE was in the dark on. So I know that the district office is really, really busy. I did discuss with Danielle about, now getting into the logistics of the education that's, as the school's opened. So I know that you're going to get in there, Danielle, but I just want to, the CEC members to understand you've been working hard. Go ahead.
Yeah, I can actually respond to what Akila is saying, and it is something that I think in terms of parent voice, it might be a topic you guys want to bring up and have somebody come to a meeting should you choose. So one of the things that we have been really clear to our community about is the teacher shortage in learning models. And I'm not blaming anyone for learning models. I'm just talking about the different learning models that we have in the city. And because District 25 is so diverse in the needs of our individual students, our teacher shortages are in the area of special education and ESL. So, some of our bilingual programs have been impacted. Our ICT programs have been impacted. Our 12 to 1-to-1 programs have been impacted. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the data that we've been sending up to Central around teacher need, many of our teachers are coming from, are of special education. Now, one of the things that Akila is referring to is when they go through individual parent conversations where Akila is saying, I pushed on the needs of, my individual child, which she then was able to gain access to, is something called an RSA, which is where an outside provider, an outside agency is contracted by the DOE to provide set services to a child. Now, the reason they only do that when we're saying we cannot provide those services. It is something that we are monitoring very carefully, and Akila, we are recognizing it. So she is surfacing a need, and I will have more to talk about with this next month, but I am also going to escalate that it did come up at a CEC meeting that, CEC members are interested in getting some more information to make sure that we are providing services. So she's speaking something different, Joe, than we were talking about just looking at what blended learning, what learning looks like in this world. She's talking about actual services within an IEP and are they being provided? So, so it's both. They're both kind of.
Is that something that could be escalated sooner than next month? I mean, is that something that should come up immediately?
It's something that we are internally working towards. What I am saying is it's a concern, right? In terms of, and I can only speak for our district, but I do know our need to diversify learning models has caused and created a shortage of special education teachers because there's only so many you can have, right? So if you have, and I think that would have existed even if we didn't have 3 different models. The fact that you have some kids at home in general and some kids in school in general would still have caused that,
Right. And I have brought this up before, though. I had brought this up in one of our meetings because I had asked them, what's going to happen if my child is blended and he gets to school and y'all don't have enough special ed teachers or the support for him? Are y'all going to force him to do blending? I mean, to do straight remote? And I was advised that no, this wasn't going to happen. They have all of the teachers. I mean, that I was basically told I didn't really have to worry about anything. It wasn't going to be any problems. And then come to find out, if I don't ask any questions, he would have had ICT, but he wouldn't have had the SETS program. Then they put in the paperwork for SETS, and they provide him with 2 hours a week. He's just transitioning into a high school. He's never met these teachers. He doesn't know anything about them or the work. And you're telling him he's going to get extra help for 2 hours in a week. It didn't even make sense to the SETS teacher because of his IEP.
Right. So I think Akila is surfacing something just in terms of parent voice and advocacy in these new models and how it looks different for different types of learners, right? So I'm going to give you just an answer in terms of something that we're working on, Akila, and I think it would be great if you became part of this, where we are working as a district, and especially our parents and our parent coordinators, in putting something together called Parenting During the Pandemic. And I would love for you to be a speaker in that, to talk to parents about advocating for just that.
Sounds great.
Because we and there's a lot of bumps in the road around this pandemic. We know that, hear that. We're working on it as a district, right? Like, I'm looking at how to solve problems in the district, right? And it's part of that is about now a parent voice, and you can be that. And it's okay to say, like, here's a problem that we have. And parents, I want to tell you where your resources are, what you need to talk about, what you need to ask for. We could also pull other people in to kind of talk from a DOE perspective, but what you're saying is a parent perspective. And I would like to offer, especially in a virtual world, I know that everyone's time is busy, but if we're doing parent meetings across all schools, all of our parent coordinators have to do a 4-workshop series called Parenting Through the Pandemic. Okay. And there's different topics. So we could take all the special ed ones and link you with those parent coordinators. You could do the same thing over and over and over again to all parents, just in different schools.
Okay.
Right? So that way you're doing outreach, and at the same time, it's my job to kind of escalate what you're saying and then answer those questions for our students that may not be getting their full services. Everyone's getting, and parents and schools are working to make sure that services are in place, but getting what is in the IP, and I hear that, just so you know.
Thank you.
So Esther, are you here? Esther?
I see her.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
yes, I'm here.
So that's some information that you're going to collect in your one-on-one with parent coordinators, like who's thinking about that special ed component, that parent voice component in the Parenting in the Pandemic workshops.
I have Akila's info. I'll reach out to her.
Perfect. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Akila, for that. Are there any other items to discuss?
Hey, Joe, it's Rashmi.
Hey, Rashmi, go ahead.
So as we are talking about parents' voice, I just wanted to see how, if anybody or if the district office or you guys have received any questions regarding parents' concern, because I have, in terms of one of the other issues that is coming through this pandemic, and it's about wearing masks and teaching in a classroom. It's a closed door. And I know I kind of brought this up last time, but there was no evidence to prove it otherwise. But me being a parent of kids and having teachers sit in an empty classroom with a mask on. So I know that when I brought it up, it was said that it comes from a principal guidance, page 40 or 80, but that's not the question. The question is, or maybe Juliana can answer it, I don't know. Like, is there any way to look at that regulations? Because for kids who are remote, whether they are blended remote or full remote, if the teacher is sitting in an empty classroom with closed doors, what is preventing them not to wear a mask when they're taught? It's very difficult for younger kids to just see the eyes of the teacher and understand and guarantee that if this will not be looked in a different way, the district level academic scores will go down by the end of this year, because it's very hard for kids to relate to teachers when they're teaching for 4 or 5 hours when kids are just looking at their eyes.
So I can speak to that, Rashmi. So one of the memorandums that has just come out talks about, we had certain accommodations that could have been requested for teachers to work from home, and those were medical accommodations. But there is a new memorandum that came out last Friday that talks about our teachers who have remote programs, fully remote programs in schools, and their ability to teach from home, as long as a principal and the BRT has worked together to ensure that all aspects of school safety are covered, not just in classroom. So there will be opportunities around just what you're saying for more teachers to be teaching from home and therefore not needing to wear masks. And although we don't want to say some of our schools closing is a benefit, but one of the objectives of having teachers work from home if they have fully remote programs is to make sure that we don't have too many teachers entering a community or gathering in classrooms. So that is going to start, I'm sorry, my son acts like I'm nothing but his mother. So that is, he'll just talk, it doesn't matter. So that is, that has started as early as this week, but it will take place by next week. It should be in full effect. That includes teachers who teach in the morning and who have travel time to travel home in the afternoon. So you will see an increase in teachers not having to wear masks. But the reason, and there may be discussions for teachers who do spend some time in schools and teaching remotely, the reason that they have to continue to wear masks, and we can ask for different types of masks, and there are different types of masks for certain types of providers, such as speech providers, where you can see through them, and we can now ask more for that since we will have less teachers in school. But I've actually seen it myself with staff, and I've had to have conversations with principals where a teacher is teaching a remote class and then it's over and another teacher comes in and sits right across from where she was just talking, right? So I've seen it happen time and time and time again. So there is the need when people ask why we need to wear masks. I think that is a really important piece, especially because I have seen it. But I do think the new memorandum is going to allow, it's going to take away a lot of what you were talking about. Because some of our schools, we had 19, 20, 25, sometimes 30 teachers who had full remote programs teaching in school, and now they can teach from home.
Okay, thanks.
Changes, it's mostly about keeping the child or the student engaged, right? It's not just the mask. I know that, and we discussed this. I know my daughter sometimes sits and she's watching a teacher sitting on a couch and just my daughter's not engaged. It's got to be some type of beyond the mask, there's students. Mm-hmm.
And we're going to talk a little bit about that at DLT on Tuesday, Joe. And then I think in the November CEC, I'm going to ask you guys if you'll allow me to sort of present where we're going with this. I think it took a little time for Dr. Mike and I to sort of get a handle on how we are going to start the conversation about ways to tackle, and we could also say, disrupt this kind of unlearn and relearn the way we learn, because that's where we have to be right now. Because this is nothing like we have ever experienced before. And that's why it's a great opportunity for us to pull in all constituents so everyone's voices are heard. But one of the ways that Dr. Mike and I are entering this work is not through only engagement, but student empowerment, and how we activate all different aspects of teaching and learning and curriculum to give students their own sense of advocacy, to want to engage, to have this understanding that this is learning, right? So, even this morning, and I know we have to go because it's 10:25, but even this morning, when I was leaving for work and my daughter's school starts at 7:30, I said to her, learning is not laying in your bed with your computer. I don't care if that's remote. That's not learning. That's logging in, right? And so, but I don't just blame I don't think it's just a parent's job. I think it is my job to get her up and get dressed and say, this is not where you sit. And if you can't go on your desk, then you come outside. But I also think it's a teacher's job as to, what that should look like and feel like. So we are really in a new place. And the more I start to study it, right, and look into, I do know that there's some very critical thinkers out there in this world that are meeting together, that Dr. Mike and I are studying. The more I start to study it, the more work I see that we need to do. So So we're going to start to present just the beginning of that in November to you guys and just get your feedback and get some community feedback. But we're really committed to these chats on all different levels, to hearing what parents have to say. And, you know, I do want to congratulate you tonight. I thought tonight really revealed you guys as a board and also like the community. I don't think I've ever heard the community speak in that way. Like a lot of times when they're angry about certain things, they just kind of, but today they really spoke in a way that I was like, wow, we have to get something done here, you know, and so I want to congratulate you guys for that. I thought it was really
have
good.
one question. It's more on blended learning. So just want to know, we are shortage of teachers and you're looking to hire more teacher for the schools, but I just want to know, are we going to hire any technical person for support work? Because with blended learning, the technical aspect could be a problem. For instance, in my school, they were doing live streaming, and there was at least half the class was live streaming. Half of them were disconnected during one of the session. They weren't able to get any kind of support. The teacher tried to get some support, but there was none there. So will there be any support given down to the schools?
Yeah, so Louis, can you speak a little bit to DIIT? And I know they're evolving as we speak because they were usually working with schools, but now I think they are kind of forming supports for remote, correct?
Sure. So all of the products that are offered across the board to all schools, such as the DOE iPads, logging in with the New York City student accounts, Zoom, Google Classroom, DIT has begun supporting families with those items. And, you know, families can open up tickets. You know, I will say that, you know, like Danielle said, they are expanding. There's lots of growing pains, especially at the beginning of the school year. I do believe the system did get a little overwhelmed, but someone will respond to a request for help. But for what you're saying right there, that sounds like a school chose to do live streaming.
And it may have overloaded, and I think we learned.
No, it's just basically she was on it for some time, and somehow the internet went out or something disrupted the session, and she didn't know how to get back on.
Well, this is one of the problems we have with live streaming is, you know, it's very hard for a teacher to teach and manage the stream at the same time.
Right, but however, she was resolving the issue of having lack of teacher for a separate teacher for blended. So the same teacher was teaching the in-person as well as the blended.
I understand. You know, I understand. Yeah, I understand why they wanted to do the live stream, but that's just one of the challenges I think of that you just highlighted is, you know, the teacher is trying to teach, but they also kind of have to be the person that's keeping an eye on the live stream. Usually that's a separate person. I think Danielle had spoken about what they do on Long Island. There's actually like a separate person managing the camera. Right.
Are we providing in-kind support for them? Because it's one solution for lack of teachers as well. So it's not like they choose to, it's just that they are trying to provide a solution right now. But if there's something in the pipeline, or we create something in the pipeline for them for technical support inside the school themselves, they could service a lot more teachers that way. I'm just saying.
Oh, they have technical support in school.
Okay.
That's through DIIT. Yeah, you call in a ticket.
But it's
I think this happens more than we even realize. These interruptions.
And I think they're happening. You know, there's a lot of weight being put on the what do you call that? The technological grid, Louis? What do you call that?
Bandwidth, Danielle.
The bandwidth, right?
The bandwidth, internet bandwidth, yeah.
And that happens to me at home too. You know, it's not just subject to schools. I mean, our computers go in and out at times, just due to a surge in the Wi-Fi that's coming into your house, or even through your coaxial cables. Sometimes that does happen, and will happen in schools at times as well. Those unfortunately are unavoidable because it may happen. You know, we can't. You know, there may be an issue that comes up with one of the Wi-Fi boxes in a building. You know, that may, you know, it could happen in a school, but there are resources to kind of like checks and balances with DIIT to kind of help support that when it happens.
Even so much as DIIT can come into a building, and if there's room to expand the bandwidth, they can do that as well.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
And then it's important to realize, you know, is the student going to be penalized if the student misses out on critical information?
So we say the student is never penalized for issues with technology, right?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I was just going to
I
say
have
it's very common here in College Point. A lot of our students, we have the worst internet, as many people know if they talk to me. And I know that our school had several issues with a lot of kids logging in, and the teachers are really good with, helping the kids get back on and making sure they get their work. So I don't think the kids are being penalized at all, because I think the teachers understand it's out of their control.
So I actually received a number of parents telling me that if, sometimes like right now, I'm not showing my face for obvious reason, but I'm talking. But if some kids are not able to show their face, and I don't know if the teacher is giving them a warning that if you don't show your face, but they're saying that if you don't show your face, even if you're talking, you're going to get marked absent without even asking the students what's going on. Are you okay? Why are you not able to say? So maybe the district office can look into it. Like, why are the teachers making it a blanket statement?
That is, we have a training for our principals tomorrow. They have made slight modifications to the attendance policy, but I do want to let you know that New York City's attendance policy is coming from the state attendance policy. All across the state, they're saying to students, you need to show your face in order to be marked present. But there, like I said, have been modifications made to that. But initially, that was the training that teachers received, correct, Louis?
Oh.
Yeah, originally it was a student, in order to be marked present for synchronous instruction, the teacher had to physically see the child.
And that came from the state.
And that's just applying old attendance like law to this new kind of remote setting that we're in. So, but there's other ways to see if kids are present in class.
Right. And Rashmi,
are they participating?
Right. One of the reasons is not just a voice. So now you have teachers coming in September who don't know kids, and now you're only recognizing a child by their voice. So you don't know their voice. It's not like I could recognize if you guys all went off, off camera, I would be able to know who's speaking because I know you. So I think that was one of the reasons why it started that way, but they have recently made modifications and our principals will be trained in it tomorrow morning.
We also have kids, no one's child here, of course, but that would log in and then peace out. They're not even near the computer.
No, I'm not talking about those kids. I'm talking about kids like they would log in and they're showing their face, but all of a sudden something happens and they're not able to log in, but they're speaking. But then the teachers are saying, if you don't show your face, you'll be marked absent.
Oh, that's different. Yeah.
That's where that came from. But I see what you're saying, that when you go offline, it does fix computer issues, right? So if I'm on my computer and I start to get an echo or, I'm glitching, sometimes if I turn off my video, it fixes the computer. So yes, I think they're taking that into consideration, and the state has kind of eased up on that a little bit, and therefore we're going to ease up on it a little bit as well.
Okay, cool.
Does the teacher know if a student's computer is glitching and they're not cooperating? I mean,
no.
Not unless they tell them.
Right?
Yeah, really.
If my daughter's camera goes off, I will get a text message from her teacher asking me if everything's okay.
Oh.
So within minutes, she'll ask if it's the computer, if it's that she turned the camera off. Usually I'll get something from the teacher within a reasonable time from when it went off.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's just the school or.
I need to know that.
I was just going to say in high school too, in Angelo's high school, he gets a message. If he turns his camera off, because sometimes, he might be eating breakfast or something, and he will turn his camera off and the teacher will automatically send him a message. Is everything okay? Why did your camera go off? And, a couple times he's like, I was eating a bagel. So, but they do check. I mean, there are teachers that check.
Yeah.
And there's some kids that fall asleep while the camera's on. My son had a full student in the class. It was like the first couple of days, and the boy was laying there. And he's like, "Mom," I'm like, "What happened?" He said, "He's asleep. You could hear him." And
Charlie,
the teacher's like, are you okay? And he'll wake up and say, yeah, I'm okay, and go right back to sleep with the camera on. So, I mean, it really.
I think that was probably my son.
We got a good laugh, but honestly, the kids are going to do what they want to do with the camera on or off. So.
Well, but that's why I think we need to start talking about this whole student empowerment and agency and really gaining this understanding of the, like, what learning looks like now. Learning is not going to be the learning that we were used to. It's not.
No.
It's different. And even if we go back, if this
going to be different.
Pandemic goes away tomorrow, we've still learned that technology is an important part of learning today in society, and kids need to have access to the types of exposure to different learning styles. Technology is part of that.
Now I have a question. My son graduated. He's now in Veritas, and I called them. I put in for a new device because he was in 189, and the device that he received from 189 is no longer working for Veritas. So I called them and I'm like, he needs a device because he's working off of my job laptop and I need my laptop. And the gentleman's gonna tell me, now we all know I have a broken ankle, so I can't go up to the school. Until the 189 receives the old device, he can't get a new one.
That's not true, but Akila, I will come pick up that device at your house because 189 needs computers.
They gotta go back anyway because they gotta replace my son's. It's not working. It doesn't stay.
I will actually, I will swap that out for you. If I will get the Veritas computer, if you give 189 back.
No, I'm gonna take it back tomorrow. They're gonna get their laptops back, but it was just, my thing is he needs a device for school. So you're gonna tell me that you're not gonna give him something that he needs to work remotely?
No, they shouldn't do that.
Yeah,
well,
they don't even know that you have a device from 189 unless you tell them.
Well, he told me that it shows up in the system under my son's student ID number. This is what he told me today.
So you're saying okay, I understand.
It might be showing up, you know what? I mean, it could be showing up.
They assigned the device on the RLD.
Right. And so it looks like, there are some schools that we are tracking because of shortage of devices.
Mm-hmm.
Some schools had older devices, so when they gave out the devices, they broke, and they're trying to replenish devices, so they started keeping track of it. So what they're probably seeing is that your son has a device already, not necessarily 189s, but they shouldn't say to you.
But that's what he told me today. He said, well, until you return the one to 189, he can't receive a device for Veritas. I said, but you're two different places. And
I don't know why. Just tell them to give you a device.
Yeah, I gotta go tomorrow.
And I'll get the device back from you.
All right. Well, they said they sent me an email just a little while ago, telling me that they have discovered COVID in Veritas. That somebody was tested positive. So I really don't want to go up to the school at this particular time because I still have an open wound, and I really don't want to put my immune system in any type of way in jeopardy for anybody or anyone. So he's just gonna have to use my job until I can get up to his school. But it was just weird to me that he said that. I'm like, I told the guidance counselor, put that in the system, that I requested it, and he denied it. So it doesn't look like when my son can't get on, that it's his fault because he doesn't have a device.
Okay.
All these things are new things that are happening.
Yep.
Yeah.
Easy. Is there anything we need to discuss, or do I entertain motions to adjourn our meeting?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion. Motion to adjourn.
You don't understand how many Zoom meetings I get on.
Monica made the motion. Brooke seconded the motion. So
Maybe
I think
we could watch the debate together.
Yeah.
I think we missed it at this point.
Yeah, it hasn't been on for a while.
I'm ready to be the sleeping kid.
I think we had our own debate.
We'll watch it on the 11 o'clock news, I guess. So, okay, so we'll follow up with the subcommittee meetings. Deputy Superintendent, nice. I don't see an M anymore. I just see you. Thank you for joining.
I stay on the down low, Joe, until I'm needed, and then that's it. I'm here for you guys whenever you need.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you.
bye. Hello.
All right, guys. So we will touch base through email through Carly, and we'll see Juliana next Thursday, right? And our next meeting is when, Carly?
November.
After the elections?
I think it's November. Hold on, I'm sorry. Give me a second.
It's November 4th.
November 4th, right? I thought it was the 7th.
Go ahead, Juliana.
Joe,
November
yes,
4th.
tomorrow night is a parent briefing all about COVID testing in schools. So hopefully some of the questions that were asked tonight will be addressed in greater detail tomorrow night. I'm going to send all of the testing related questions that I was able to take notes on to Adrienne so that she has those ahead of time. But I put the flyer in your chat,
I see it in the chat. Yes,
and
thank you.
you all should have gotten it from Face late tonight, like while your meeting was going on.
Just another meeting.
I'm sorry.
But I appreciate that if you can submit those questions.
Yeah.
Because I don't think
I've already sent some of them in.
Perfect.
We should
All
all
right.
have a time clock with Face, a punch card for Face, for all the meetings we attend.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right. So our next meeting is when, Carly? November 4th?
Mm-hmm.
When is the election?
November.
The following week, right?
No, November 3rd.
November 3rd.
Not a vote.
November 3rd.
All right.
Hopefully we got a new president.
Hopefully things will change, right?
The most important thing is that you vote.
Correct.
Too bad they're not voting on Zoom.
They're not using a Zoom poll.
And I hope we don't have many schools that close between now and then either. You know.
I have a question about how does that affect the elections? If a school closes, can you still vote there?
So if a school closes for instruction, they can still be used as a polling site. And as of right now, students aren't going to be in school on election day anyway. They'll be learning remotely.
We took a picture of it. You know, I had the video on.
A lot of people are going to just be
I had the video on.
absentee ballots to vote anyway.
I'm voting early.
Well, right, early voting too.
October 24th it starts.
Yep.
Interesting. All right, guys. Listen, have a good evening. It was nice.
You
good
too.
meeting.
Good
Nice
night.
seeing everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Okay. Good night.